Hello, hello and welcome. I say welcome, but there are 0 viewers, so I'm literally talking to myself. Let me post this up, and I'm here to get ready to have a conversation with my father for the first time on air, which should be fun and interesting. He is a South African, and I'm going to be asking him about apartheid. I just did a massive video, which I'm having trouble rendering actually right now, which is about the Young Turks and their attempt to vilify and demonize this white judge in South Africa, and just their pathetic regressivism. And they tried to latch that onto the politics of South Africa and turn it all into a fuck white people campaign down there, which was kind of embarrassing. And he's having a little lunch, but I convinced him to come on, and I have some questions I want to ask him. Firsthand experience. He was there. He was born there. Went to school in England, and then went back to South Africa at the age of 18. Lived with his father, and lived on a farm. My grandfather owned a farm. He was a musicologist, and yeah, he lived with Zulus. I mean, with black people. They were our nannies and our groundskeepers, and my grandfather hired a bunch of them to sort of work the farm. And he has a different perspective. I think everybody from South Africa has a different perspective on race, and I think that's what he gave to me. I think I always thought of it differently. You know, we have African artifacts around the house at all times, African songs and languages, and Swahili and Zulu and stories. In fact, my grandfather published a book. What is it called? The Lion on the Path. And it's a collection of stories that he would hear. And a lot of them were just oral tradition. And he'd go tribe to tribe recording music. And he gathered the cultural tradition of these stories, which he then wrote down, illustrated, and put in a book form and sold it. In other words, capitalized off the black culture. No, he did, as anybody should do, and smart to do. But that wasn't why he did it. Nobody got rich off this stuff. What he did was he was trying to spread this culture, preserve the culture. He just had a love affair with it. I mean, people get obsessed about things, or not. I guess obsessed has a negative connotation. You could call it passionate, but Jesus, I mean, the guy dedicated his life to it. And a life in South Africa is a bit more drastic. It's tough. It's hardcore. It's not a pampered existence. And my grandfather came from a wealthy family, and I'm sure he had other options in England and could have had a nice, cushy suburban life. And he chose not to. He chose to have a little bit of adventure and to go out and carve his own path. He had a story, man, it's so grim. There's a story he had where he was talking about his first arrival in South Africa. And he's talking about the drought they experienced. I think he maybe came into Zimbabwe originally, and there was a terrible drought. And he said, yeah, it was kind of depressing. Everybody started, things got very difficult. The resources were scarce. There was no water. There was no food. And so what happened first was the dogs died, and we had to eat the dogs. And then the babies started dying. The children started dying. And when that happened, the old men of the tribes, they said, okay, I've had enough. And what they did was they said, I'm going to take my hat, I'm going to go sit down under this tree, and I'm just going to die. And that's what they did. They would just be like, okay, I'm checking out. That's watching babies die of starvation. Okay, I've had enough. And it's just, that's normal down there. I mean, what is normal in Africa? You would be amazed by it. The whole world turns a blind eye to it, primarily because it's uncomfortable. And it's an ugly truth that we don't feel the need to be reminded of. It's like, for example, eye surgery. Sometimes you'll be flipping around the TV, and there'll be some insane channel that's decided to show you a close-up of eye surgery. And you're just like, what? Why is that? How is this even legal? That now I have this terrible thing that's seared into my brain, and I can't shake free of it. And I'm aware that eye surgery exists. I'm aware it's going on probably right now, but I don't need to see it. And that's the mentality I think a lot of people have with the realities of what life is like in Africa. You could apply that to the misogyny in Africa, definitely the rape in Africa, which is what my next video is all about. And the numbers on that will be totally, should shock you. If you're not shocked by them, then you are a very calloused individual. The murder stats out of Africa, the HIV and AIDS stuff, just totally unacceptable. I mean, just crazy. The education levels, the life expectancy, all this stuff. It wouldn't, there'd be riots in the streets if any of these numbers appeared in your village, your city, wherever you are in the West. It would just be absolutely panic time. Everybody stop what you're doing. We got to fix this. But over there, it's normal, and it has been for thousands of years. Maybe not the AIDS stuff, but that's a newer, just cherry on top, a new problem for them to contend with. Anyway, with all the talk of racism in America, I could not let it stand that they would attempt to bring their sort of bigoted, anti-white, typical talking points over to the landscape of South Africa, because it's so not true over there. And they also have this great temptation to say, there are white people in South Africa. Isn't that wrong? In fact, anybody who has criticism of apartheid or any part of white people in South Africa, ask them a follow-up question and just ask them, how do you feel about any white person in any part of Africa? Like, I feel that you are profoundly not okay with that as a concept. And I'm not talking about the first people to come over, in other words, the colonizers or the missionaries or the military, anybody like that. I'm talking about the people 20 generations removed. Are you okay with them being there? The ones who are like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. Johannesburg's my home. I was born and raised here. My father was born and raised here. I'm an African. Fuck you. That type of group. People, they really do like to see things in black and white, and it's just a simpler answer to say, why did you intrude on these beautiful, noble savages? They were doing so well. Oh, just like the American Indians were doing so well. They were just singing Kumbaya, and I think they were doing, I don't know, some sort of dance where they all hold hands and go around in a circle. I mean, it's just such a whitewashing. It's a blackwashing or a brownwashing of history. And it does a disservice to reality. Maybe as a history major, a guy who studied some history in college, there's something really obnoxious about that sort of revisionism, especially because it's also masquerading as an attempt by them to declare themselves to be just a swell, great guy. I'm a great person because here's how I view this. This is the lens. Now, my view of it is not going to take facts into consideration. It's not going to be an accurate telling of history. But this is how I think it's best to summarize that entire situation. Fuck the whites. Fuck apartheid. Fuck the Nazis. Fuck America. Basically fuck America. If you're Australian, it's the Aboriginals' land. So if you're white and you're in Australia, man, I don't know what to tell you, man. You're the problem. And Aboriginals in Australia could light fire to their own babies and, throw them off a building, and people would find a way to say it's not their fault. I mean, what can you expect from them? Do you know what they've been through? Well, they've been through getting money from the government, welfare. They've been through committing crimes and being alcoholics. Yeah, they've been through that, but that's their responsibility. I mean, they just completely skirt that issue. Now, I'm gonna check out the chat here. I've been on a little bit of a rant, but that's what I guess I am drawn to doing this, because I enjoy ranting, apparently. You don't become a YouTuber without the desire to talk to yourself at length. So we got Izzy in the chat. Izzy was recently outed as being the time-traveling former version of Anna Kasparian before she had nose surgery. It's so funny because I posted that up as a joke. There's a picture of her because it looks similar to a picture of Anna. And I said, oh, this is Anna before her nose job, before and after pic. And I would say like 10 people replied to it thinking that that actually was Anna before her nose job, which I think is an insult to Izzy's nose. I don't think there's anything wrong with Izzy's nose. And we have Mads Carlson, Mads, that's a Scandinavian name, isn't it? He says he loves me. And he has a little heart, which is always alarming when you receive heart art from men. Nordic Pride says, "You're awesome, Devon." Thank you. I try to be. I fail. Today was, for me, Game of Thrones, man. We were Game of Thronesing all day. My boy Ross was nice enough to post up the high-res version of it, because us in Germany, we are behind the Iron Curtain of BitTorrent. And I've been watching it. I've been watching analysis of it. We've been watching season 1. I mean, it's ridiculous. We're the kind of fans who watch the entire intro every time. So like, if I'm watching the 3rd episode in a row of Game of Thrones, I'm watching the whole intro. I'm not fast forwarding that. Like, I want to hear the song. The song is the emotional lubricant that gets you ready for what is to come. Game of Poems, exactly. I listen to Game of Poems, or Game of Owns, actually, the podcast, which is pretty funny. I should probably contribute to that because I want to throw in a little owns. There's a goddamn industry surrounding Game of Thrones. The podcast, do you have any idea how many popular podcasts there are that discuss this? And they go over every minute detail. It's kind of startling, but it's also, for me, joyous to see such a well-loved, deserving, mega success like Game of Thrones. So they took a multi-million-dollar gamble and just came out with aces, just hit it out of the park. And this season has been spectacular. And I mean, I could talk about Game of Thrones all day long. Hitler goes to Israel. You're my hero. Wow. Awesome. Will you please sing There Goes My Hero for me and send it to me? A song which was sung by the drummer of Nirvana, which is, as you guys know, if you don't know by now that I'm a Nirvana fan. I mean, seriously, all I do is just talk. It's just noise, white noise, to get to a Nirvana remix or mashup. And there was a nice fan of mine from New York, this young woman, who posted a picture of her holding up a Nirvana album, which was, wearing a white male t-shirt. So she was after my heart, clearly. Who else we got? Dave Grohl sucks a dick. Do you have any support for that clam? Dave is okay. I don't think he has a huge archive of hits as the Foo Fighters. I mean, he's got a couple good songs, obviously, but the fact that they've been crowned like America's rock band is a bit nauseating to me. I don't agree. And I think that they are limited in melodically and the number of compelling songs they've created, which is not the worst thing in the world. I mean, nobody's expecting you to be the Beatles, but let's chill out with it. Devon, have you seen the Game of Thrones, the musical with Chris Martin? I think, how long ago was that? Did they do that a while ago? It's amazing because I was watching this. Devon, we have a Flying Monkey meme page on Twitter. Do you? Send me a link. I'll check it out. Game of Thrones, I was watching the first season. I mean, these actors are like significantly younger. And it's crazy because they take their sweet time between seasons, but it's been years that have gone by. And I'm like, when was the last time you were engaged in an ongoing story that has occupied half a decade of your life? It's like never has that happened. And so, spoiler alert. Well, I don't know. Should I give out spoilers? Oh, fuck it. I won't give the specifics, but in this latest episode, we had 2 characters who have been not together for the entire show run, and they finally do come together. And you feel like you've spent so much time with each individual character that now to see them together, it's bizarre. It's like seeing 2 parts of your life come together, and you're like, wait a minute, you're my work friends and you're my high school friends. You're not supposed to talk to each other. What the fuck? So it gets a bit strange. Mugabe for U.S. president. I've been trying to render a video all day, and it's been a hassle because it's a friggin' hour and 20 minutes is a video I just did on South Africa and rape, which, it's not. I hope that you guys are entertained by it if you have the time. I don't expect you to watch it all in one sitting, at least. I do expect you to watch it all, or else I'll come for you. But It's my longest video ever. And I don't know why. I was reacting to a 12-minute video and I put out an hour 20 minutes. So I have a 10-to-1 ratio in my criticism of their criticism of a white judge in South Africa. Devon, send me nudes. There's surprisingly, I don't have that many nudes of myself. I'm not sure if it's a good thing to have nudes of yourself just lying around. It's been a while since I was on Match.com. Not that I would put them up there anyway. So yeah, let me just say that I am once again waiting for my father, who's eating some lunch, and I'm going to be just talking with him about apartheid and his experience in South Africa. And link, or it's going to be a challenge to get him logged onto Gmail or get into this Hangout. But once we work out the bugs, you're going to hear a proper British accent. Of course, it changes. It's weird, accents. He's been living in America for so long, but he really has not Americanized his accent at all. Although when he's in England, people don't really take him as English. So, and he doesn't sound South African. So he's somewhere in between, probably somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean is his accent. Dress up your penis as a pilgrim, take a picture and send it to me. Well, it's very specific and I'm almost compelled to do it. I don't have any pilgrim outfits that are the size of my penis. In other words, extra large, hanging around. But fix your audio. What's wrong? Anders Breivik just told me to fix my audio. What's wrong with my audio? Is it too quiet? Surely the only problem with my audio could be it's too quiet. Devon, what are your thoughts on the Hound? Well, I just heard Peter Baelish recount the way the Hound became the Hound, the burn victim that we know him to be. I think that there is some truth to I'm optimistic that he might still be alive. I think that his wounds seemed severe, but I don't think he was going to bleed out. I think he might have had a few broken bones, some broken ribs, and he definitely took some injuries, but he was close enough to a traveler's path and close enough to the Erie for me to think that somebody might have come by and hooked him up, helped him out. That being said, all the other times that we have not seen someone die on camera, they've ended up being dead. In fact, in Stannis, they just confirmed, like, yeah, he was executed. There's no return of Stannis. And it's happened a couple other times where it's just assumed, it's implied that the person's dead. And people get very conspiracy happy with this. People want there to be certain things, like one of the dire wolves gets killed and they're like, maybe, well, we didn't see him die. Well, it could have been another wolf. It wasn't big enough. So I would like to believe that. Not all conspiracy theories are created equal, though. So some are not even worth calling conspiracy theory. They're just straight up true. But the Hound, I like the character. I think he's a renegade. I think he's funny. Great writing for that character. He changed over time. Of course, everybody wants to see him fight the Mountain. There's talk that he might be called on to fight the Mountain, the zombie Mountain, when this trial by combat comes up for Cersei, which it doesn't really make that much sense. You'd have to do a lot of explaining to get him in King's Landing, but we'll see. Now, as I check back in, Devon cannot speak Deutsch. What? Yeah, I've had some people get mad at me for not speaking German, which is a bit odd. They don't understand, like, I'm not supposed to speak German, first of all. German wasn't offered in my school. I had literally no reason to speak German. And I'm not going to learn German as an adult. I can't learn anything. And they all speak English here. And if they don't speak English, then there's a strong likelihood that I don't need to talk to them. I mean, I'm sure there's some lovely people that don't speak English, but they're going to tend to be older and they're going to tend to be probably not as well traveled. And, I'm sure there's a lovely grandfather in Western China who speaks Cantonese, and I'm not going to learn Cantonese just to shoot the shit with the guy. It's a very hard language to learn. Yeah, I would imagine so. And you just need a motivation for it. I mean, and I just don't have it. And I just got back from France, where I don't think I said a single word in French, and I kind of speak French a little bit. I understand a little bit. My vocabulary is probably the equivalent of a toddler. I think I might have said, ironically, I think I said "danke" when I was buying some baguettes, which is embarrassing, but I try. I'm a typical American when it comes to traveling. Speak Zulu. I should ask my dad to speak a little Zulu. Xhosa. Yeah, I should speak a little, get those popping sounds popping off. My dad speaks a bit of Zulu and Swahili, and I'll ask him about that. Learn Afrikaans. And I do want to ask him about his, I don't know, the rift. Natalie. Natalie is so sexual, man. Natalie's talking about how about those breasts. The breasts on the Khaleesi were fake, turns out. Under contract, she's not supposed to get naked. She was getting all sorts of naked in the first season. I mean, she's getting doggy style banged pretty much every episode. And other moments of the first season, her nips are out, just through the clothing, but just like boing, here I am. People are so worried about female nudity. It's crazy. I mean, none of the Dothraki are complaining about being topless, but nobody's complaining. And I'm pretty sure that the CG department modeled her fake tit shot after her real tits. So it's all a weird game of like, I don't know. I guess it's different to be a mainstream female actress, nice redundancy, and show your naked body to pretty much a billion people. It's easy for us to critique that, but it might have some, I don't know, some lasting ramifications that I'm not considering. I don't think I'd drop trow in front of 100 million people, would you? Although somebody just asked me to dress up my penis as a pilgrim and send it to him, which is Game of Tits, exactly. Game of Tits would be I'm sure that's a show. I'm sure if you Googled that, you'd find a couple productions. What do we have here? Vaginas on screen equals A+. The only vagina I've seen on screen was Sharon Stone from Basic Instinct, and it was not even a vagina. There was no lips, no camel toe. You got nothing. You got a little slice of hair. And it was so shocking at the time, though. People were like, whoa. Devon, who's the best looking female character in Game of Thrones? I think Sansa is a looker. I'm a fan of Marjorie. Oh, definitely the Red Woman is. I mean, if you're looking at a Marjorie Red Woman Sansa sandwich, you're gonna want to dig into that. It depends on your taste. It depends on your specifications, but you can't go wrong there. Let me think. On top of that, who else would there be? Devon's dong would embarrass the other men on screen, I guess you meant, says Christopher Evans. Yeah, I was just watching Theon Greyjoy have sex with a prostitute, and he showed his cock on screen. And I'm going to go out and say I don't think it was fully erect, and he just was having sex. So he was basically putting a noodle or a semi-hard noodle into this prostitute. And, it's strange, man. It's like, if that happened to me, and I know my dick is going to be on camera for all of time, I would have probably said, director, can we do another take on that? Like, give me a second. Can we get the fluff girl in here? Yeah, Natalie Dormer, is that her name? Yeah, she's amazing. Devon, a lot of my friends are all regressives. All or not all? And they won't even listen to me when I tell them Islam is bad. What do I do? I would say just be unapologetic. Oh, I do like Gilly, by the way. Yeah, Gilly, not so much on the show, but look at Gilly in real life. She's cleans up amazing. If your friends are not feeling it about Islam, just call them out for their virtue signaling. Tell them that them ignoring the problem is not solving the problem, and just hit them with facts. I mean, that's what we're doing as atheists. Atheists, I say that, I'm sure there's probably some non-atheists in the room, but as atheists, what you can't do is get frustrated. You cannot fight the uphill battle of constantly hitting your head against a tree and getting frustrated with the fact that most of the world is idiotic and backward and stupid and wrong. Because that's always been the case. That was the case before you were born. It's the case right now. It's going to be the case in 100 years. They're just wrong. And they don't want to hear the facts. I mean, that to me is the more interesting part, the psychological aspect of it, which is why. What on earth would lead you? Hold on. Um, what would lead you to not confront something that's true about whatever, terrorism or Devon is a tranny? How am I a tranny? Do you see me? I'm reacting to just random aggression from the online community, although I'm guessing that was a joke because there's no way he's seen those pictures. Dragon Feather, yes, Dragon Feather is legit effable. Devon, what's your opinion on rapists being allowed into the little girl's room? Which rapist and what little girl's room? Are you talking about bathroom politics? Like the transgenders and who's allowed to go into that room? I think public bathrooms are really a epicenter for much of anything, crime or anything. I mean, put cameras in there if you want to, security cams. But there's probably going to be some legal issues with that. If anything, it's a place for gay sex, consensual gay sex. And you might ask how I know that. And if you ask me on that, I'm going to take the Fifth Amendment because I don't know what you're talking about. I must say, Devon has a tranny voice. Jesus Christ, people like my voice. What? Your voice is a bit tranny. How is my voice tranny? Oh man, these are fighting words. I come on here to have a chat. I'm talking Game of Thrones. I'm talking women I'm attracted to. They come back with my voice does not sound like a man's. I should go into a rage right now and break something. Fuck this. Fuck this world, man. Have you heard Abby Martin rapping? No. Please tell me that's not real. And we have a guy named John DeBoer. Now, if that's a real DeBoer, that means he is an Afrikaner. Means he's Dutch. Means he is a relative of Scarlett Johansson and what's her name? The chick from Mad Max. Blanking. Super hot. He is probably going to receive some hatred when I talk to my dad about why the English hate the Afrikaners. Devon is cool. Ignore the haters. Okay. Yeah, I'm not happy with my voice. What the hell? That was like the one thing I'm okay with. I mean, most people hate their voice when they hear it. And I think I've gotten used to my voice since I've done my YouTube videos, which is an interesting thing. I mean, I'm listening to myself a lot online every day. Like, I remember the other day, my girlfriend asked me, "What are you doing?" And I'm just like, "Oh, I'm just listening to myself." And I think I made myself laugh. And I laughed out loud. And she's like, "What's so funny?" I'm like, "Oh, no, nothing, just me." And she looked at me and I was like, "Oh, Jesus. Yeah, Charlize Theron. Exactly. You're fucking a white male. Okay? You're fucking a white male. It's unbelievable. What more needs to be said? Mic drop. Your voice soothes me in my darkest hours." Exactly. I mean, if you're not pumping my voice out of a loudspeaker and sitting on it with your genitals and letting me vibrate your nether regions, I don't know what you're doing. Yeah. Speaking of voices, did your father's accent influence yours as a child? No. My sister nowadays, who lives in London, she moved to London about 10 years ago. She speaks with a slight British accent, which every time I hear it, I tease her about it because I know it's fake. I mean, this is as fake as Madonna speaking with a British accent. And so, but it's really not even in the accent as much as the words, the choice of words. That's when you know. Like I was talking, I was watching Phil, the Issues guy, do this Game of Thrones wrap-up show, and him and his friend, who are both from Boston, and they drop the wicked. They go, "Oh yeah, Daenerys tits, wicked hot." You know, and this is a word that unless you're from that area, there's just no way you're using it. It's going to be really unlikely. So, I think I used words that my father would use, like if you want to warn somebody and said, "Watch out for that thing; it might hit you in the head," he would say, "Mind your head." And mind your this or that. That's not something an American would say. Mind the gap. Mind the gap is the sign in England or London, I guess, because there's a gap between the subway when you get on and off the tube, and so it says mind the gap. And this lady comes on and says it with a British accent, and you know, it's just I say mine. I will occasionally say that. The word muti. Now I think that's a South African thing actually. Muti meaning like a cream or some sort of a sauce, a remedy of some kind. Like you got to put some muti on that. Like you get a sunburn, you're gonna put aloe vera on. Yeah, where's the sunburn muti? Now in German, muti means mother. So I've been changing my understanding of the word muti. That's how cultured I am. I have two definitions of muti. Devon, how do you keep talking on and on without cocaine? Well, the premise of your question, uh, it means that you think that I'm not on cocaine, which you have no evidence of that. But yeah, it is. I'll tell you what it is. There's a pressure. There's a social pressure to when you glance down and you realize that people are listening to you, that you feel obligated to continue talking. So there's a constant stream of questions, and I feel like all of the social pressure to avoid pauses or dead air is placed upon me squarely. So I just continue on, even if I have nothing to say. Mind the wage gap, will you? Hey, Devon, will I be needing to mind the gap soon? Minding the gap, yeah. I try to mind the gap on occasion, if you know what I mean. Devon, thoughts on the Ukraine winning Eurovision? I am crushed. Devon, you look like Mel Gibson a bit. Why? Because I'm racist? Mel Gibson circa what year is my follow-up to that. By the way, if you want to see a Mel Gibson movie that's an amazing film when he was a young man, it's called The Bounty. And it has an amazing cast. It's a sleeper hit. It probably is on Netflix. You could probably just find a stream of it. The Bounty. Listen to this cast. Anthony Hopkins, okay, stars as the captain of the Bounty, which is the famous ship that, I think it's a true story, with the mutineer, Mutiny on the Bounty. I think it's the original story. Anthony Hopkins. Now, also, one of his ship's mates, Daniel Day-Lewis, young Daniel Day-Lewis, before Last of the Mohicans. Also, you want more? I'll give you more. How about an Academy Award-winning Best Actor? Liam Neeson plays another one of the ship's crew. Now, that's a cast. That's a cast and a half. So you probably want to go check that out. The Bounty is awesome. Yeah, Ukraine, look, it wasn't one of my top 5. Toward the original time, I watched the Ukraine song on Eurovision, and hold on, I'm just trying to keep track. Devon, what do you think of Thunderfoot? Does he have the testicular requirements to garner your respect? I like him because he contributes. He's entertaining. He entertains me when he pokes fun at Anita Sarkeesian. As an atheist, he's obviously on the right page with that stuff. Aside from that, he is a oddly shaped, oddly necked, unfortunately looking goober of a nerd from England. I mean, there's not much to not like. It's, he's good. He's a good guy. I don't know him. I think he's sort of not interested in YouTube, or I'm sure he's got other pursuits going on. He's not exactly pumping out content, is he? Or am I mistaken? Evalion needs to enter Eurovision. Yeah, this little girl YouTuber, where is she from, by the way? I need to figure that out. I saw a couple of her videos, and I'm mesmerized by her. Now, what was I talking about a second ago? Oh, yeah, Ukraine. So the thing about the Ukraine, I watched, here's how much of a dork fan I am of Eurovision. I was watching the Ukraine national finals. So I was watching that, and she was not my favorite within Ukraine. I didn't think she should have won at all. There was another song that was better. And when you listen to the song, the first verse, it's very dour, and you have this woman come out, and she looks like Elaine from Seinfeld. So she comes out there and she's singing about death and the people die and all this, and it's just the most non-pop, non-happy song ever. And literally, I must have listened to it maybe 3 times, and I never made it through more than 30% of the song. I just turned it off, and I was like, what the fuck? This is not good. And ironically, the first time I heard the whole song was during the semifinal at Eurovision. And in the second half of the song, the bridge of that song is so unique and powerful that it turned my entire opinion of the song around, and also the visual presentation of that song. So whoever was the art director behind the graphics that they put on her, below her, like on the ground, they had this LCD, and then behind her, beautiful, like decorative, this golden, really vibrant yellows and golds, and this like tree of energy. It was crazy. And she starts humming. Basically, she reminded me of a priestess, like a Dothraki priestess. And she starts doing this weird chanting, and it's this tribal thing, and it feels something ancient. And it's this very sorrowful, dark sort of bridge. And basically, the song is gone. There's no drums, there's no melody. It's just this woman sort of wailing into the night sky. and feeling very powerful, like emotionally, it seems to be very compelling. And she ends up hitting this huge note, and she's just yelling, and behind her comes this beautiful golden tree, just forms out of nowhere, and then the drums kick in and the beat comes back in, and it's just this really well-crafted moment that turned my opinion of the song entirely around. And I think this must have caught on. The song is about a political situation. It was about post-World War II Russia, I think, and it to a bunch of Ukrainians. They basically gave them the Armenian treatment. They sent them on some sort of a relocation, and half of them died, and it was a terrible event. I don't know the details of it, and I can't be bothered to look it up. Devon, you said you played soccer during high school. What position did you play? I was a sweeper, defender. I would come up for corner kicks and stuff, but that was in high school. Before that, I was a midfielder. I was like just wherever the ball was, I was the guy. Very good soccer player, I will say. I'm not going to be modest about that. I'm very good. Anyway, the Ukrainian song, I just liked Australia's song better. I like the woman better. I like her personality. I like Australia better than the Ukraine. I think that song she really performed the hell out of that song. And it just gives me a better feeling inside, although I do respect the artistic achievement and the integrity of the Ukrainian song. So it could have been way worse. I mean, if the Russian song had won, it would have been shit. The Russian song did not deserve it, although it was entertaining and funny. But Devon, has Cenk ever tweeted you back? Do you think there would ever be a chance that they would have you on the show? No, I'll never go on the show. He did tweet me back when I first started Twitter. The first day I started Twitter, he tweeted me back and tried to shame me, tried to say, look, this is an anti-Muslim bigot or something like that. Devon, play me on FIFA. Yeah, I would like to play FIFA. I need to learn I need to get a controller, and I need to get set up on Twitch or Steam, whatever the kids are doing nowadays. I'll get it set up. You just like Australia more because of the kangaroos. Yes, that is my mating pool. My gene pool is down there, so I have an affinity. And notice the difference between me and Vadim Newquist. I am not a guy who goes around pretending to be a kangaroo. I'm not putting on a fake Australian accent. I don't give you kangaroo jokes talking about, hey, my boner's sticking through my pouch. Nothing like that. You'll never get that from me. And by the way, that joke right there is funnier than anything Vadim's ever said in his life. Hey, Devon, do you love your dad? What? Wow. What a Freudian question. Yes, I love my father more than anything on the planet. Great guy. Love him. Fantastic man. I'm beyond lucky to have him as a father. Will you join the KKK? Will I join? The future tense of your question implies that I am not a member, which is incorrect. I am actually a member of the Eagle Scouts, and I just got an email from them talking about, I don't know, they did a census. They sent out letters to all Eagle Scouts, and they said, you got to join the database. I don't know. They're probably going to try to hit us up for money at some point. Devon, are you familiar with Colin Flattery? If so, your impressions. Yeah, this is the guy that don't make the black kids angry. I think he's a sort of one-trick pony. He's obviously obsessed with blacks. And I think he produces some compelling content. He sheds a light on some things that are, again, dark, ugly truths. I think he probably has some personal involvement, like maybe he was beaten up or I don't know, something going on with that. But I could see him as being volatile. I don't know his personal thoughts or opinions on things, but I know the type of channel he has. Devon, why is Tom York the greatest songwriter alive? Such a fucking whining cunt. Well, I don't know. I think he's got an ego. I think he's rich. He tried to create a song for the latest Bond film. And I was happy with the song they did, which is with that gay guy. What's it called? What's the name of the latest Bond? Fuck. I should know that. Anyway, I heard the Radiohead version of the song, and it was totally depressing. It was just noise. It was cacophonous. Terrible. I mean, you cannot... Look, just because you've done one thing good does not mean everything you do is good. And I love Radiohead, and if you want to go see the mashup video I did, I recommend you do it. It's Radiohead versus Celine Dion. And if you think that's not a good match, then I dare you to go watch my video, and it's called The Power of Creep. Just look up The Power of Creep, Tracey video remix, and you will see what I created, and you're welcome. Devon, your thoughts on Putin? I didn't vote for Putin. I think he's a again, an egomaniac. I think he has similarities to Trump. I think he's dangerous. I disagree with a lot of policies of his. I disagree with his current run of power in Russia. That being said, I don't care about Russian politics and know very little about it. Devon, I will debate you on abortion in caps. Are you pro or against abortion? I guess you must be. Well, you have an American flag, so I'm guessing you're a conservative type. Okay. What is your point? Tell me your point. If you're trying to say that fetuses are alive, okay, they are developing life forms. I'm in favor of killing developing life forms. I grant you. Devon, we linking up, mate. There's Adam. Yeah, Adam, I'm going to be keeping you posted of my travel plans, and yeah, I would very much like to meet up. Should be fun. I'm going back to London soon. Devon, whoa, what was that? I just missed one. Radiohead and Portishead are better than Muse. I don't know why it has to be a competition. Depends what you're in the mood for. Portishead is a great band. Radiohead has many great songs. Very haunting, very great. Muse, is my favorite band. So you're going to have trouble convincing me that they don't get the number one spot on that list. Devon, thoughts on Syrians? Yeah, I was just riding my bike around town the other day and seeing some of the temporary housing we've set up for the Syrians who are here. They were outside playing soccer. They're enjoying the weather. I have not heard of any problems with them here aside from them getting banned from the nightclubs and the swimming pools, which granted is problematic. But I mean, the news, nothing major has happened. They seem to be very thankful and sort of doing their best to situate their lives. And the German people have been hooking them up crazily. I mean, they are really getting everything they could have ever hoped for: medical attention, housing, food, money, education, learning the language, opportunity. As far work opportunity, that's a separate thing. I don't think they are given the chance to work legally. So, I mean, literally, they're just getting a free ride. It's kind of scary on a big picture. But from a humanitarian crisis situation, well, these people got hooked up. At whose expense is the question. And is this policy detrimental to the future of Germany? When terrorist attacks start rolling in, like they did recently in Munich, where some dude was stabbed up, killed by a guy chanting Allahu Akbar, who do we point the finger at? I mean, obviously we point the finger at the insane Muslim who did it, but who else? Don't tell me that you're going to play dumb as to why that Muslim was there. Devon, we like all the same music except Tupac. Fuck that guy. Well, what do you mean? Fuck the guy for what? Fuck his music or fuck him? It's a big difference. Devon, are you my brother? Are you Jon Snow to my Robb Stark? You could be my bastard brother. That would be fun if we were the same family, but it would make my sexual attraction to you seem a little bit weirder. Devon, have you heard from Lalo recently? Nope, not a single word. Off the grid. He's in Los Angeles, and I guess he's doing his thing. Whatever. Fuck him. Devon, I wrote a fabulous joke. What country hates air pollution the most? Which one? I do not know. How long will it take? How long do you think it'll be before you get raped by an Islamist in Germany? I think it'll be a while. I think they'll go through the women first. But you do see gangs of Muslim dudes rolling around, like groups of them. And just groups of men in general are a bit alarming. Groups of Muslim men, yeah, just ratchet that up a bit. When will you and Sargon get together on a Google Hangout? We've done one before, somewhere on this channel, actually, on the third channel. He came on and we talked about politics and stuff like that, and I tried to shame him, and Godspeed to that gamer from Swindon, Carl. Oh, Carl. Dev, will you come to the UK in a couple of years so I can say hi? I'm coming in a couple of weeks. What do you mean a couple of years? The UK. What is the UK? I'm too much of an Englishman to even consider saying the UK. I mean, what are you talking about? Belfast? Let's get real. We're English. And when is that vote happening? Aren't they leaving Europe? Yo, Devon, you excited for some seasons 5 of the Vikings? To Rome we go. Yeah, of course I am. But I thought they just took a break and they're mid-season. basically to avoid the Game of Thrones competition. I'm loving Vikings, and I can't wait for them to continue. And I'm alarmed that Rolo defended Paris again. This is bullshit. But yeah, the AIU shirt is the best money I ever spent. I've become a militant atheist of the physical kind. Huge supporter. Thank you, Adam. And the picture of your wife and child at the playground was hysterical with the Muslim behind you guys and the face she was pulling. Devon, when will you visit Toronto? Well, there is a Devon Tracey in Toronto, but he is a little Puerto Rican kid. Toronto, I've heard many good things about. I am adverse to weather conditions. Maybe I would go there if there was a UFC and I had an excuse. Devon, what famous person will you be most sad about when they die? Ricky Gervais, probably. God forbid. But are you talking about just a famous person of any age or a famous person who is of advanced years? Prince, I did not care too much about personally. Didn't know the guy. Obviously, he was prominent in my childhood, but even then, I was never like, yeah, I'm way into Prince. I mean, I was into Purple Rain and all that, but I think I saw the movie, but I mean, clearly this guy's an alien. There's no way I can relate to anything this man is doing personally. I mean, I have no idea what was going through his head, but definitely a talented guy, an artistic guy. Devon, what color hair did you have? I still have hair, dude. Come on, man. I'm not a chemo patient. It's brown. I have brown hair. Now, where's my pops? Let me ask him if he's around. Just seeing if he's around. Okay, what do we got here? Thoughts on Matt Brown getting jumped by a trainer after the fight in Brazil? He got jumped by his trainer. I saw a fan like push him, and he like almost punched a fan on the way to the cage. Matt Brown got destroyed. He knew he was going to get destroyed when he took that fight. Damian Maia is on a different level. He's in the prime of his career, in his late 30s. It's kind of scary. He's as well-balanced MMA fighter as he's ever been. His takedowns are very good. He's just like a pit bull. He's just going to get you down. He's going to drag you down. He's going to pull guard. And once he has you on the ground, the man is Velcro, and he's an anaconda, and his jiu-jitsu is second to none. Stephen Merchant is the talent. Stephen Merchant is talented, but he's not the talent. I saw him perform a play in London recently. It was not funny. I did not enjoy his performance. But of course, he didn't write the play, but he's not a great actor by any stretch. He's decent. He's serviceable, but that's not his true talent. He's a funny guy. He's a likable guy. He's a brilliant comedy writer. Devon, hey, Devon, thoughts on thoughts? My thoughts on thoughts are, yeah, that any discussion of consciousness sort of makes me think of Sam Harris and his thoughts on thoughts. And it's sort of a frustrating avenue because we don't have the answers. All we have is questions, and probably not even the right questions. A lot of good questions in this chat, though. Father here. Talking to a chat room full of people. Back. Devon, your dad can sing. Are you musically talented? Not musically. I would say I'm okay. I think I have the ability to do that, but I just never had the desire or passion to. But I play a little bit of the kalimba, which is the family sort of instrument that my grandfather makes currently. Actually, we have a factory in South Africa, and it's a thumb piano. And the drums I played a little bit growing up, but overall, no. Singing wise, and as far as my interest, I'm definitely musical. I feel like me making all these music videos is a way of me expressing myself musically, but I was always more artistically inclined, and that was always what drew me. I think the combination of the thing, I don't think there's any reason to not combine the arts. So I just think it's just way more transcendent when you can have music with visuals, which is what I was just describing with the Ukrainian Eurovision song. In fact, the visual choices that these Eurovision songs made were one of the most interesting things to me. I've always been a great appreciator of musical scores, cinematic scores. Game of Thrones has had some beautiful music this season, noticeably pretty and powerful. The soundtrack for Mad Max, the remake of Mad Max, just amazing. Don't even get me started on Danny Elfman or Hans Zimmer or friggin', what's his name? You guys know him, John Williams. I mean, these people make songs are a window to emotion and our souls, basically, without trying to get too dragon feather on you. Okay, let me get back to this chat. Devon, you rock. Thank you. Well, earlier in the chat, somebody said I sounded like a transvestite, so I'll take the good with the bad. Devon, favorite chess time control. Mine's 15:10. See, I don't understand the 15:10 thing. I don't understand any of the second number. To me, that's bullshit. I play straight up time. I play quick matches. I play 3 minutes each. I used to play 5 minutes each. I enjoy speed chess. I enjoy 1 minute each. I'm not a huge fan of long form chess matches. Because I always fear that people are using some sort of program to, they're using IBM basically to beat me. And B, it's not the same game. Chess that takes 30 minutes, hours long, that's a totally different endeavor than speed chess. And three minutes each, 5 minutes each, it's not even that speedy. It's controlling the amount of time you invest into any one move is half the fun. I mean, look, what is comedy without timing? If I went to a sketch comedy show and I said, hey, everybody, okay, give me a character, a situation, and a relationship. And they state it. And then I say, okay, we're going to perform a scene for you and we're going to try to make it funny. You can't say, we'll be back to you in a couple days. We'll think of something. No, there's something to say about that. Game of Thrones was written over years. The guy sitting in the privacy of his own life, crafting that very patiently. But the fact, if you can do it fast, that is wit. That is humor. That is a whole different genre, basically. Stand-up comedy, if a guy's reacting to a heckler, you want to see him be in the moment, say something. And I feel the same way with chess. Like if you make a move and you think it's a good move, a strategic move, a move that has a couple of different moving parts, a couple of different threats, I need to assess those threats in a timely fashion. Now, if I want to dedicate 30 seconds to that, be my guest, but how's that going to work for me in the end game? It's going to be me panicking and you're going to have the advantage. So I like that. Devon, why do you copy my avatar and username? I think it's the other way around. Somebody can check the date you started your channel, but I'm going to call bullshit on that. Who's your favorite comedian and why is it Gallagher? Can Gallagher even be called a comedian? Can Carrot Top be called a comedian? There are some good comedians. I think, I've listened to Joe Rogan, not that he's one of my favorite comedians, but he talks about comedians a lot. And he says that we are living in the golden age of comedy. And the reason is because these comedians have a platform, just like everybody else, just like all the bigots and idiots and amateur news people, to get their voices heard and have podcasts. And there's a bunch of very funny people out there. The current cast on Saturday Night Live are hysterical. They're not technically stand-up people, but I love them. And, there's a lot of gifted, talented people. I mean, Ricky Gervais, to me, obviously, is at the forefront of that in terms of somebody that is pretty much guaranteed to make me laugh out loud. As far as individual comics, Bill Burr is okay. I think he gets way more hype than he deserves. Aziz Ansari makes me laugh at times. That little Korean doctor who turned actor from The Hangover. And that guy's pretty funny. I mean, he's not a stand-up comic either, but yeah, comedy is amazing. I mean, life is about laughing. Everything else is just you're just killing time waiting for the next joke. Devon, would you ever do a live chat on art and design? Sure. If there are people that are interested in that, I guarantee you, if I start talking about design and my sensibilities with art and stuff like that, it would put people to sleep. Like I was just talking to my girlfriend. I'm tucking her into bed and I'm telling her about the audio problems I'm having with my video. And she literally said this to me. She goes, Devon, keep talking. This is perfect. I'm going right to sleep. So it's a running joke that when I talk about things people aren't interested in, they go to sleep. Devon, why do you skip leg day? Because working out your legs is basically an admission of homosexuality. I see no reason. I've always been happy with my legs. They're very slender. Like I know I'm not gonna, but I never found a problem with that. I'm shaped like an elf. My father, I mean, if you look at my father, his body was very thin. You'll see in my next video. But what am I supposed to do? Build my thighs? Like, I understand there's some use to doing squats and stuff, but I just can never. I used to work out my calves when I was trying to improve my vertical leap because I was playing basketball all the time. I skipped leg life. That's my policy. There is no leg day. I mean, it's like the emperor's wearing no clothing. There is no such thing as leg day. Fuck leg day. But it's sort of a joke. It's a running joke about guys who divvy out their workout schedule to different body parts, which is you have to be kind of a hardcore lifter to even do that. I mean, every time I go in, I might rotate if I'm sore, but aside from that, I'm just doing a general smattering of exercises and weights and aerobics. Aerobics, that sounds like a jazzercise. A cardio, I guess, is a better way to do it. Devon's dad may be thin, but he's thick elsewhere. And that is a 14-year-old discussing the size of my father's penis, which is alluring, oddly. No, I've seen my father's penis on a couple occasions, which have been scarred into my memory as a child. And I mean, the thing, I think at the time I didn't judge it by its size because I had no other penises to compare it with aside from my own. So maybe that's just a universal thing. But I put it to the chat. Do you think any child who sees his father's penis automatically has an inferiority complex, and it's like an Oedipus thing, like I must, I don't know, have sex with my mother, chop off my father's penis, something like that? Devon, what Gamergate achieved? Well, what did that sentence achieve without enough words? Gamergate, I did not follow that. I was not into it. I'm not a gamer. Could care less. I think it's just one of the multi-headed beast that we're facing, which is pussies, politically correct pussies. You can call them social justice, you call them third wave feminists, call them regressives. We're talking about the same thing. It's people who are wrong, people who are obnoxiously wrong. They think they're right. They're loudly yelling that they're right. And the fact that they're not right, and they're not only they're not right, this says nothing good about them. Okay, you making problems where there are no problems, that actually is the problem. So it's even worse than being wrong. It's like if I tell you that 2 + 2 = 5, and I put that on a test, the teacher just says, okay, you're wrong. No harm though. No harm, no foul. It's like you were just wrong. No, this is actually worse. You are now creating a problem. It's like 2 + 2 = 5. Also, we should kill all the Jews. That's the equivalent. It's like, fuck, we have to put real problems aside to deal with non-problems that you've created. So, Carlos's daughter says, dad's dicks are always brown. Well, I think she's saying that because she is the daughter of a man named Carlos, and Carlos probably is brown-ish. Yeah, the race thing is amazing, you guys. It's so hysterical. It really is. It blows my mind. I live in such a white area. I mean, aside from the Syrians I live next to, everybody's white here. I mean, who am I kidding? I mean, so it's that whole canceling out thing. I mean, if everybody's one thing, then it's not even a thing that needs to be discussed. And why would you be discussing it? So unfortunately, America is unique in that way, and only parts of America, cities. If you come from a major city in America, especially in the South or in the, I don't know, Northeast, West, I guess there are blacks everywhere. Unless you're the guy whose podcast I'm going to do again, who lives in, God, what is it, Montana or Idaho? I got to ask him how many black people he's ever touched. I think I have asked him that. Oh, what happened to Voltaire's ghost? I think he's comfortable with his life. I don't think he needs to pump out videos. I think he's got business concerns. I think he's got a new girlfriend, which is probably the lion's share of the answer as to why he's not pumping out stuff. Somebody says he's dead. That is a rumor. Did he die? Oh, he's on holiday. Okay, Izzy would know. Devon, you should go on DP and just rip them until they just kick you. Yeah, I don't care about those guys. Those guys are sad. Did you see the meetup they had the other day? I mean, I just don't understand that type of person. I don't think I ever will. But really, they're just giddy. I'll tell you what it is, the guys like that. They're just happy that somebody cares about what they're saying. And I understand that. It's natural on some level. But these are guys who, they went from a place where nobody cared what they had to say. Privately, not socially. Their family doesn't give a shit. People at a party don't care. So they don't have an audience. So when you get some, fat ass, inbred, sort of ignorant, uneducated schmuck who's like, wait a minute, all I have to do is be my sort of fat ass gamer, inbred, ignorant, schmucky self, and people will like me for that? Oh my God, this is the new way of things? Well, this is fantastic. Shit, I should have done this way earlier. Goddamn, internet, why couldn't you have been here when I was a kid? Of course, the internet has been there when they were a kid because they're younger guys and they're used to it. But popularity does bad things to people in general. That's the quick version. Conor McGregor would lose in boxing to Mayweather, you think? Who wouldn't lose in boxing to Mayweather? But you could just as easily say that Mayweather would lose to Conor in an MMA fight, which he would, obviously. Devon, what's your opinion on Gavin McInnes? Genius. Gavin McInnes is amazing. Watched a video, Anthony put one up on the Flying Monkeys podcast, and just, man, is hysterical. I think, I don't know. Here's what I know about him. I don't know too much about his upbringing in Canada, but he comes from my generation and he speaks the truth. Okay. And he's funny. He's a legitimately funny guy who speaks blunt truths and willingly, in fact, intentionally goes and discusses topics that nobody else wants to discuss. He confronted a feminist. There's a 45-minute video of him talking to a feminist. Hysterical. Man is on point. I don't give a rat's ass if I disagree with this guy on economic politics or whatever. Who cares? I mean, seriously, who cares? And I don't even know how much I disagree with the guy on him. I know he's technically on the right, I guess, but I mean, fucking, the man is right on so many things he talks about. And that's why, by the way, he's funny. He's funny because he's right. It's not funny to get up and say something that has no basis in truth. You're laughing when you are laughing at social commentary that is being presented as comedy. You're laughing at what is true. Even when Jerry Seinfeld would say something about airplane food, you're laughing at the fact that Jerry Seinfeld has, come up with a charming way at expressing something that is actually real. I think what it is we want truth. We want realness. We want it in our music. So if you're going to be a gangster rapper talking about gangster activity, you better be real. We want it in our drama. If I'm watching a moment on Game of Thrones, I want the dialogue to be believable above all else. If it's not believable, I'm out. I'm emotionally just totally out of it because it's saying nothing about the human experience. And the same is true with comedy. I mean, don't bullshit me. Don't tell me things that are, just hacky ways of trying to get to a punchline. Give me some insight. Give me something that, poke fun at things that are uncomfortable, or, give me something new. Give me something innovative that I haven't considered before. And I appreciate that from Gavin McInnes. And I think I'm subscribed to the guy. I want to hear more of what he's got to say. And as far as disagreement, I think he probably is against abortion or something like that. But even the things I'm against him with, I can still acknowledge that the points he makes are not absurd. There's a difference between disagreement with somebody and disagreement that is so stark and there's such a gulf between the 2 points being made. There's no coming back from this. It's not even worth me engaging you. And this is what it is to be closer to the center, I think, politically. I mean, if you're super far right or super far left, I mean, it's come on. There's no even, why would you bother even trying to engage that? All right, back to the chat. Have you watched Gavin McInnes' movie? No. Did he was it a documentary or a fictional thing? What's your opinion on the shitload of anti-Semitic content online? Will you do some videos on it? Yeah, it's so funny, man. Will I do videos on anti-Semitism? Yeah, I do. I'll do it all the time. Guess who Germany voted for in Eurovision? Guess who they gave their 12 points to? Israel. And it was so interesting because the jury is the professional people that are given half of the votes in Eurovision. So it's half the public and half these juries that are pre-selected, musical industry experts, I guess. So the jury voted on the Israeli song, which was, this super diva gay guy, actually an okay song. And the jury gave it, pretty good votes. It actually was in the upper third of the votes. And then when it came to the public vote, they were in the bottom third. They got totally screwed by the public. And I thought, wow, that's very interesting, because most of the others tended to line up. But with the Jews, people were like, nah, I'm not into that. Devon vapes. Devon doesn't vape. I've never vaped ever. Never smoked ever. I tried it once when I was like 14. Why is your name Devon? Because my family comes from Devonshire, England. Actually, Somerset, which is the neighboring county, but it was one of the names of the regions of my family heritage, and so I was going to be either Devon or Somerset. Those are the two names, and they went with Devon. Devon, can you vote for Brexit, or do you have to be a resident of the UK? I'm guessing you probably have to be a resident, and I wouldn't even be interested to do that anyway. But I don't know. What are the numbers at? Are they leaning one way or the other? I mean, isn't that coming up really soon? What do you think Trump's chances are to win against Hillary Clinton? My gut says there's no way. I think sanity will win the day, and even in America. I think that once the Bernie supporters acquiesce to the fact that their guy lost, and once the months roll by and people really see we're up against, I think the debates will be a disaster. I think every left-leaning organization and news agency will absolutely tar and feather Donald Trump. I think women and minorities will throw up the middle finger, and we saw what we saw what blacks can do for a vote. We saw that with Hillary Clinton in this primary, but we also saw it with Obama. I don't think they're going to turn out to vote maybe in the same numbers as they did for Obama, but they never will. That was a historic thing. But yeah, I mean, the women have to vote. I mean, it's crazy. And this whole Bernie or bust thing, that movement has to be killed. And anybody who publicly states that they're I'm going to vote for the libertarian and I'm going to not vote, I mean, that is a disaster. And those people need to be held to the fire and burned for the Lord of Light. Devonshire Tracey, exactly. Yeah, but I'm happy with my name. It was a weird name. My middle name is very weird. I've always liked my name. I've said my name to people and they say, ooh, that sounds like a famous name. That sounds like a woman's first name as a last name. That's interesting. But I felt different. I've always felt different and unique because there was no Devons in my school. And, it can work for you or against you because as a child, you want to conform and you don't want to be different. So, I used to hate having freckles. I hated being not tan enough. And nowadays I'm happy. I'm happy as a clam to not be tan. Yeah, its middle name's in Zulu. Means how are you? Trump by landslide. I mean, it's so crazy. These people, I think part of it is the scumbags. Some of them are in this chat right now, who support Trump. I feel part of it is sexism. Honestly, I do. It's sexism. It's also their desire to latch on to an alpha male, which is crazy because Donald Trump is so not an alpha male. He's got a lot of money and he's male, but in their mind, out of the candidate, I'm not going to vote for some donut-shaped grandmother, a woman. Why would I do that? That doesn't seem like the manly thing. I want strength. I want vitality and power and bravado. I mean, so imagine if you had a kick-ass guy on the left. Who's an example? Me. I mean, somebody who's up there, not a pussy, not a regressive, but a man, a youngish man. Then all the dorks and all these Trump supporters would look and be like, oh, wait a minute. They don't have a copyright on being confrontational or showing strength. So we can have somebody who's honest and strong, but also right, and also sane, and also has experience. That's what we need. We need a guy like, I mean, shit. I don't even know. I mean, literally, it would be difficult for me to even think of a candidate that has all those qualities and is on the left. I'd be hard pressed to think of somebody. Shit. Maybe the chat could. But that's why I don't care about politics. I mean, why would I even expect those people to come out of the woodwork? Devon, do you have a woman card from Hillary? What do you mean by that? You're saying she plays the woman card? Why wouldn't she? She's a politician trying to become the president of the United States, a task she has been undergoing for the last couple decades. Of course she's going to take advantage of the fact that she would be the first woman president. It's not that big of a deal. The country's moved on. I mean, if we're going to allow black, I mean, the thing is, I asked the question, are we more sexist or racist as a country? And the answer was, we're more sexist. That's why we gave black people, black men, the vote before we gave women the vote, white women even. And that is why we had a black president before a woman president. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think you could have predicted that. I never realized AIU was such a regressive. Excuse me? I am the one who coined and popularized the term regressive, and I am everything but a regressive. I'm the exact counter to that, but I enjoyed your, no, you're not. I'm not a regressive. You are. You're this. That was very nice. You took me back to the Sandlot with that. Does your girlfriend dress you? No, she doesn't, but she does do my laundry and fold my clothes. Devon, do you have a weird fetish for repressed Muslim women? No, not really. Although you should, if you want to see women who come from the Muslim world, go check out the Azerbaijan girl from Eurovision, or this girl's Christian, but the Armenian and the Azerbaijan girl from this year's Eurovision, absolutely stunning. They wore next to nothing. I mean, seriously, they came out in bodysuits, just like painted on, and they were just absolutely stunning. I know a woman who has everything we need on the left, me. Izzy, you have to be 35 years old and American to be president of the US. So you have failed miserably. Does your girlfriend undress you? Not often. Dan Hernandez is just Skyping me saying, "What up, my cock?" Patrick is in the chat saying that he loves me. We love you. Okay. He is a spokesperson. Mia Khalifa looks like Ray William Johnson. Yeah, Mia Khalifa apparently is what, the Muslim porn star? Yeah, why would I know that? There's got to be a market for it. I mean, the Pakistanis are crazed with porn, and they are the ones that are doing it the most. I love you. I'm voting for who? There's no way to pronounce that. Funny what you said about your girlfriend and your voice. My little girl likes your voice. She's listening now with the other earphone. Oh boy, I gotta watch myself then. Well, hello there. You are very lucky to have Adam as your father. He's a good bloke. Adam should be the father of all of us. He's the new Adam. It's not a coincidence that he's named Adam. He's wearing a fig leaf right now. Devon, what color briefs are you wearing? I just bought a bunch of German underwear, and they look kind of like Speedos. They're boxers, but they're like tight, and they kind of look like the UFC fighting pants actually. And they're multicolored. They're maroon. One's sort of black and gray. Yeah, but I do like to keep it sort of. I've been boxers for a long time, and I think from the moment I could decide what type of underwear I wore, and they were not purchased for me. Vote for Gary Johnson. Why? Why not just burn your voting ballot? Devon, you're mad talented. Thank you. Thank you very much. The new UFC Reebok. I haven't seen the new. Is there a new one from UFC? UFC's outfits are terrible. That whole Reebok deal. I love Reebok. I think they're a British company, right? But the fact that they would decide to make all of the outfits look like zebras. In other words, black and white, and both fighters have black and white on their shorts. That is the worst idea. That should have been knocked out in the first brainstorming session. I mean, the whole point of a zebra is to make it hard for predators to spot one out of the pack. You're supposed to blend in with others. It's camouflage. And the whole point of outfits in a sport where you have two people who are wearing nothing and you want to differentiate there's multiple camera angles, and every time they cut to a new camera shot, you don't want to have to figure out who's who. You need each person to have different colored shorts on. This is why it was great when Anderson Silva would come out with yellow shorts, or when Conor McGregor, he had to twist the arm of the UFC. When I was in Vegas and I saw him live, he came out with green shorts. And it was the first time any UFC fighter since the Reebok deal had a pair of shorts that were not black and white. It is absolutely insane. The public have spoken so loud and clear. Everybody hates them. And they continue on with it. It's insane. Do you think Bernie will run as an independent? No, he won't. And if he did that, he would basically be ensuring Trump's presidency, and it would be political suicide, and he would lose and just drag down all of the country with him. He gave it a go. He has a bigger platform now. I'm sure he's going to have more sway and influence, and he's going to have a nice retirement. But no, dude, you cannot. You lost. Devon, do you think an openly declared atheist will ever be president? Well, the closest we get would be a Bernie Sanders. Yes, eventually it will happen, just like we'll have a gay president one day, but within our lifetime, more questionable. Devon, out of curiosity, how do you morally justify eating meat? It's a good question. It's one that I'm on the same page as Sam Harris. I talked to my girlfriend about it. You really get into iffy territory when you start talking about morality and meat eating. I would say that one case to be made is that it's not immoral inherently to eat meat or be a carnivore, because this is, you get biological with it, you get scientific about it, and you say, look, this is what we've always done. This is what the animal kingdom does. You wouldn't call it immoral that a snow leopard eats a mouse. So why are you calling it? The only thing you could say is that, look, we have choices now. We don't have to do that. You are willfully not you're not taking the choice. You're not choosing to be a vegetarian when you could, when it is within reason for you to do that. And so therefore you are promoting the unnecessary killing, slaughter, factory farming, all that stuff of animals. And why? Because you like the taste of something. I think we are living in an age that is going to be remembered as the last moments before the decline of meat eating. Like, I really think that if this synthetic meat thing, which Sam Harris did a podcast with this guy who's like this genius guy from India, and they are making major breakthroughs with synthetic meat, and they are saying like the taste is there, the protein is there, it's all legit, and the costs are going to be going down over the next 5-10 years, and it's going to be accessible. And if they can recreate meat, which is the key, and if they can satisfy you on a visceral level, would you be up for switching? Would you be up for actually substituting that into your diet? And like 90% of the people were like, yeah. And another 5% were like, well, I don't even eat meat, so it's not even an issue at all. So I think that is the answer. I think I wouldn't put it past humanity to get to achieving that. I think obviously the implementation of that and getting people to relinquish their traditions will take a long time, just like change is slow. I mean, look, we got a Christian in the chat right now. This guy's a Christian because his dad was a Christian. His grandfather was a Christian. His neighbors. I mean, it takes a long time. It really does. And like Patrick, this is the guy who I talked to and explained every point about atheism. And okay, Adam, we'll grab a coffee, sure. And he's not going to relinquish it. And it's crazy, man. It's just, we are very immediate. We want immediate gratification. And you don't want to see Neil deGrasse Tyson say, in the span of history, we are at the very, knife's edge of the last second of the human clock of whatever. And we don't want to hear that. We want things now, do it. So I sympathize with any vegetarian or vegan who wants to see radical change. It's not going to happen. And just like I sympathize with atheists. I could have said the same thing about gays in America, but that change has been quite rapid. The acceptance of pot, for example. Think of the lifetime of history of America. Discount the fact that they used hemp all the time back in the day, but they've been waiting for freaking generations for that to change, for the needle to move on that, and finally it has. Maybe it's like evolution, where you have accelerated moments of change. Perhaps that's it. Hold on. I'm getting set up here to talk. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to switch gears. I've appreciated you guys asking me questions and stuff. And we can continue this at a later time. But I would like to bring on my father. And let me see if I can get this set up here. It might take a little while here because I got to send this invite and get him on. All right. Stay tuned. 1 second. Let me just work on this. I've got to. Okay. Can you hear me typing? All right, I just told him some directions, but this could be very similar to when I tried to explain to him that he doesn't need AOL for the internet. So I'm guessing we might run into some technical difficulties here. Anyway, back to the chat here. Yeah. So I just wanted to talk to him about apartheid and his experience with it and some of the dynamics of all the BS surrounding that. It's just so crazy. I just feel like there's nowhere, people are so simplistic in what they want from a conversation, how they want to craft the conversation. So if you want to talk about race in America, they want to just say slavery was bad, wasn't it? I think black people got a raw deal with that. I'm against slavery. Really? Okay. Well, so am I. So is everybody. What's the point? Can we move on from that talking point and talk about other things involving race? Or do you feel the need to announce that to the world? Okay, great. South Africa. Okay, apartheid. Yes, bad. But you know what is interesting? I think underneath apartheid's a very easy way of saying, oh, it's bad. It's like saying, you want to talk German history? Oh yeah, let's talk German history. The Nazis, terrible, terrible, terrible. The Holocaust, oh yeah, very bad. Okay, but you don't want to talk about any other part of German history. You don't want to talk about post-Nazi or pre-Nazi or talk about the large segment of even Nazis who had nothing to do with any single war crime whatsoever. Okay? You don't want to talk about that. You want to state your very easy, simplistic, rudimentary point and be done with it. Aren't I the best guy in the world? I'm against Nazis, slavery, and apartheid. But here's what I think people are also against. And I think they're against, Devon, what are your thoughts on transhumanism? I think it's funny. I think it's beautifully, naively optimistic. And I think it's also, on the same token, fascinating and intriguing. And I'm going to interview that transhumanist guy, fan of mine, again, I think. I think people are against, beyond apartheid, I think they're against colonialism, period. Now, they're not going to usually come out and say that. They'll say, oh, I'm anti-imperialism, I'm anti, but colonial, they're anti any group going and taking over another group. And what's so ironic about that is they come from a group that took over another group and thousands before them, millions before them. I mean, this is what we have been doing always. So to say something like that is so naive and pacifistic and just ignorant and stupidly idealistic. It's like, what are they saying actually? They're saying, okay, hey, world history, hey, every human on the planet, everybody freeze, stop what you're doing, whatever land you're on, that's your land. No more border disputes, no more revenge. Where you are is where you are. Everybody just stop. Don't do trade, don't set up base camps elsewhere, don't move, don't relocate, don't assimilate, don't interbreed, just stop. Because I don't want one group going to another group's place. Even if they're technologically superior, if they are, capable of building a civilization where the other group was not, no, forget it. I don't care if it's mutually beneficial. I don't care if it was co-signed. It doesn't matter. I'm against everything. And it's just this stupid. Every time I hear an argument like that, I half expect the guy to wipe the hair out of his face, his long hair, pick up his acoustic guitar, turn to the other girls sitting around the campfire and be like, this is a song I wrote. I'm still working on the chorus, but just give you a little vibe. That's the guy. He's doing it to try to get pussy or feel good about himself or something. It's obnoxious, man. So maybe I have a chip on my shoulder because I'm British and there's such a thing called the British Empire, and everybody's just inherently against it. I'm against it. We got kicked out of everywhere. Do not conquer, do not take over. It's just the way it is. It's easy to pick on the winners, easy to pick on the big guy. America gets a lot of flack. You know why Bolivia doesn't get any flack? Oh, Bolivia has problems. Bolivia is corrupt as hell. Bolivia has human rights violations. Bolivia has backward people doing backward things. But guess why nobody picks on Bolivia? Because they're a small, poor country and nobody gives a fuck. Okay? If Bolivia had a huge ass army and were, the same people, just if they were more on the world stage, they would probably be getting criticized. But don't punch down, right? The British Empire was the best, exactly. What have you done for me lately? It's like, what have the Romans ever done for us? From the life of Brian. Still waiting on my father. He's ignoring my comment, which means that he probably is having second thoughts. What age do you think would be all right for a trans person to have transition surgery, assuming parental consent? That's an interesting question. I mean, I think age questions like that vary from culture to culture. Age of consent, age to drink alcohol, age to join the army. I think with something like transitioning, I would lean towards waiting. I mean, I'm of the camp that I don't think it should be legal to get married or have children until you're 25. And for the benefit of everybody. That's for you. Do you respond to comments on Tracey Remix? I rarely respond. I tend to read them. But honestly, I don't really... my response to the comments would be thank you, mostly, because nobody's giving constructive criticism or asking questions. It's more like, hey, cool song. Sometimes you get hate. You're always going to get hate. If you want to post a mashup, you're going to get hate. You're going to get somebody from band A is not happy that you put band B into the mashup. And they're like, why would you do this, man? Why would you do that to that song? This is sacrilegious, man. You can't, never touch Radiohead. How dare you? Kurt Cobain's rolling in his grave. All that shit. Awful. Does your dad sound like Michael Caine? No, that's a bit thick. He sounds like, I don't know. It's hard for me. He sounds like my dad to me, but I think he sounds like just an educated British guy who, my grandfather sounds kind of posh. He sounded pretty posh. You'll see in my next video. It's pretty funny. Devon, graphic design sound cool and all, but how did someone so clever not go into science or something intellectual or some intellectual field? Well, I was a double major in history, and hold on, is that, I hear some noise. Ted, you're here.
Yes, I am. Just learning how this thing works.
All right, well, you have options here. Now, you can keep your camera on or off. I always keep mine off, but you're welcome to go either way.
I've got a line through the camera and a line through the microphone, but the microphone, I presume, is on.
Yeah, the one is the mic to mute yourself, the other isn't. Now, we are live here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my father. I've been talking to myself, Dad, for nonstop for like the last hour and a half.
Now, when I push the turn camera on,
yeah.
Oh, I see. Well, it's off. Okay. Yeah. Well, no one needs to know what I look like. That's ridiculous.
Well, it's a reveal. We could reveal it later, but I thank you for coming on and having a chat with me. We were just having a chat before, and
okay.
How was lunch?
Quite delicious, and sitting outside in the sun, very nice.
Oh yeah, is the weather in Southern California treating you well?
It's well, I mean, look, it's paradise. Everyone knows that.
So it's good to have you on. I think it might be weird for a lot of the people who listen to me to hear me talk to you, and I think it might be informative to understand, I don't know, just where I come from, which is actually a book that you gave me as an early child. Where did I come from? Well,
Well, that's the birds and the bees, which is that allowed on this channel?
we're on the internet, where everybody's one Google tab away from discovering all the secrets. So,
Okay.
yeah, what age did you give me that book? That was pretty early, wasn't it?
Do you remember reading it, or were you before reading?
Well, it was a picture book. I mean, but I definitely was reading it. Did how was my reading ability? Was I woefully behind the curve, or was I okay with that?
Well, you're on the big letters now, aren't you?
I know how to sound out the words, and then
Yeah, that's good. That's really
put them together. Yeah, somebody was just asking me a question about what age should we allow kids or children to transition sexes? What would be your instinct on that?
I think you should. I mean, if the baby's pretty, make it a girl. And if it's not,
Well, didn't they used to do that? Like if there was they had to sort of make a determination. So if you had a hermaphrodite situation.
well, the only thing I know about is the musicians in Africa
Mhm.
who had their eyes put out so they would remain a musician.
Oh, Jesus.
My father met one of the last ones that happened to. It was actually outlawed by all the African countries, I believe, at one stage. But he did meet one who had been blinded, and he was a great player. I mean, the connection between being blind and being a good musician is rather obvious. We have them in this country.
Is this what happened to Stevie Wonder?
Well, I mean, I don't know what his story is, but I mean, there's definitely a connection. I mean, obviously, you have to rely on a lot more things if you can't see.
Yeah.
And it's possible to be a good musician.
Now let me ask you a question. I'm hearing feedback from my voice on your end. Do you have headphones around?
Yeah, I can put them on.
Okay, that will kill that. Yeah. Now you were a talented singer, and you were picked out of the bunch as being somebody to be. You had a nice falsetto. I mean, you were a good child singer.
Pre falsetto, boy's voice.
Okay.
Before the voice breaks, in England we call it the treble.
Now, didn't they used to chop off nuts for the kids like that?
Exactly, the castrati. Yes, I mean that was definitely a situation which happened in hopefully medieval times. I haven't heard about it in modern times, and I did sing. Well, the polite word is countertenor.
Uh-huh.
And I did sing countertenor after my voice broke. And in fact, I tried out to get into Cambridge University as a choral scholar using that voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that voice, because I had a very good voice as a boy, that voice sort of was similar to my boy's voice in that it was a really good one and had an incredible range. But they didn't do two things at my school quite smartly enough, and I wasn't smart enough to know either. One was that they didn't train me to read music well enough, sight read, for singing. And secondly, they didn't teach me enough Latin. Well, Latin, you know what they say about Latin? Latin killed the Romans, and now it's killing me.
Oh God! Well, I'm amazed. Didn't Sarah study Latin? My sister.
And she also got awarded one year for being the most improved Latin student. This was quite extraordinary.
Good Lord! I should quiz her because I'm going to go visit her soon. I'm going to ask her how her Latin is, and if she ever uses it in real life. Now, but you were gifted vocally, but also athletically, and that helped you tremendously.
Well, it helps me. I think in self-confidence, that sort of thing. The other thing that really helped me was being good at chess.
Yeah.
Because all the SWATs in school, I could beat a lot of the SWATs, who were the people, a class and a half ahead of me.
See, my father, let me just explain. He went to boarding school in England, which is, I mean, I guess Harry Potter is the easiest way to explain.
That's right.
But it was an all-boys school.
Of course.
And so you barely knew anything about women, and
nothing.
I mean, nothing whatsoever. And it was
How
very
did you get here?
Right. You didn't have the book. Where did I come from? That was
no. I bought it for myself.
Right. And I think you mentioned once, like gaze, like the concept of gaze was very foreign. I mean,
I didn't. No, I didn't understand anything like that.
Right. So they really didn't educate you at all at this place.
No. Certainly not along those lines. And then in the holiday times, my mother did her best. Well, one of the things she did was really awful. She had some friends who had two daughters, twins, about my age. And unfortunately, they were identical twins. And when you went to visit, you didn't know who you were talking to. You said something to one, and you met up with either the same one or a different one a little while later, and you wonder, did I tell you this already? Very awkward.
Oh yeah. Now, as far as your, I thought you got selected as an expert on, what was the game you played? Fours? Fives.
Fives, yes.
I always get that wrong. Yeah, fours is not quite as advanced. And so you were like the ringer, like they brought you in to win the glory to the house that you were associated with.
There were 10 houses on the school. Each house held about 60 boys, ages from 13 to 18. And our housemaster, he was very keen on winning the what do you call it, intercollegiate,
Co-ed, no.
All the contests between the houses.
Okay.
And by the time I left, we had 50% of all the club cups that were available. And fives was one of them. And we even had a house cup for fives, just in the house itself. So he scouted all the prep schools. And so I was one of the people he scouted, because I was the captain of everything at my prep school, which prep school, up to age 13.
Right. And so you excelled in this, but it was also other things like the high jump. But your high jumping.
No, I was not look, I was good for someone who had no technique, who hadn't been trained to do anything. So I was using scissors, the scissors method, which is very ancient. I still believe it's not fair to have a landing strip. I mean, we just jumped and we landed in sand.
I agree.
And if you dive over head first, I think that's a sort of suicidal thing, which really shouldn't be allowed. I think it should not be a big soft land area.
So in other words, it should be, what height of a bar can you jump over and still survive?
Exactly. I mean, it's okay to get the world record and then die.
And so now the scissors method, for anybody wondering, is you kick one leg up over and then have the other one follow, but you're not going backwards, which is the Fosbury, what's his name?
Not the flop at all. The thing with the scissors is that your whole body is still vertical, and so you have to lift all the weight of your body way above the bar, which wastes an awful lot of energy.
You got to get your pelvis over, and it's just more mass.
Yeah.
And the scissor.
The other one, what was the other one called? The something roll, the Western roll.
Ooh.
The Western roll had just come in. And that meant you sort of rolled over the bar.
Head first, I see.
And flat again. So you lay down facing the bar on the top.
Now, I think you might, what if your genitalia might be hanging low for gravity and that might hit the bar?
No, they had not developed by this time.
Not a major concern. Well, the scissor technique is also used by a lot of lesbians, I hear. So that's I think they use it.
I know nothing about that.
That's a different context.
What is that word you're using? I don't know anything about it.
Right. So this is a glorious history you have, but let's try to locate you into South Africa. Why are you associated with South Africa?
It goes back a long way to my father, born in 1903, at age 18, when he should have gone to college like his older brothers.
He was born at age 18, or that was a hell of a delivery?
You missed something there. Born in 1903, at age 18.
I see.
he had the opportunity to go to Cambridge and and get his rowing blue. Now, blue is your award for being on the team. And Oxford and Cambridge are both rowing team colleges.
Right.
And so he was a good rower at his high school in the city of Bath. But unfortunately, his father had died some years before, and with him the family wealth. And so there was no money to send him to college because he was already the 9th child. And his older brothers and sisters had gone to college and gone on to other things and been doctors and things. But he didn't have the money. So instead, his only option was to go out to Africa and help his older brother.
I didn't know that.
Who already had a farm in what was then called Rhodesia.
Rhodesia.
So he went out to Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, and began working on a farm there. And so he got the Africa experience for no good reason, just because his brother was out there already.
And that was 1900 when?
Well, 18 plus 3, 1921.
Okay. And so
he was out there working as a farmer, but the difference between him and all the other white people in Africa was that he was interested in the local culture. and he learned the local language, Karanga. He learned some of their songs. He listened to them. He learned the language, and he started taking an interest in their culture. And
Well, I think
eventually took it up the study of the culture full time.
De Beers was interested in their culture too, but exploiting their culture, exploiting the resources at least.
Yeah, that's different.
Right.
That's the underground system.
I didn't realize we had so many people from Cambridge and Oxford. I mean, your brother went to Oxford, right?
He did, yeah.
Right. But college was never your thing because you ejected from the process. You didn't want to. You felt like you were getting nothing from it.
Well, I know. I was already fed up with education by the time I was 18, and in England at that point, you could go on to further education, but basically the idea was that you had finished with your education when you were 18, and you passed your O levels and your A levels. Well, even the O levels was you could leave at school at 16, but I went on through 18, and when I went back to Africa to join my father again, I did go to the local college there.
Okay, so describe that. First of all, I'm recalling the video that Hugh put out when the BBC interviewed my grandfather, his father, and they asked him about when he first got to Africa. I was talking to the chat about it before, and he's recounting the drought and this famine that came through, and everybody started dying. And he was like, "Oh my God, it was dreadful. The dogs were dying, and then the babies started dying, and then the old men said, 'Okay, I've had enough. I'm going to die now.'" And
yeah, Africa is fairly rough. The only thing that, I mean, it was kind of a necessity in a way. It's one of the tough realities of life that in Africa, every now and then, there was starvation, and that killed a lot of people. And then they had warfare between tribes, and that killed a lot of people.
Do you think that's
the only way there was enough food for the rest of them?
Yeah. Do you think that's part of the reason why the AIDS epidemic is not seen as such a imminent, problem? Or I mean, it is obviously a problem, but it's not. They've always faced these dreadful sort of
maybe a stoicism may be built into the character. I'm not sure. I haven't studied that, but that could be.
Okay.
They can deal with it better than we can.
So I understand now that I guess if my grandfather didn't have enough money to go to college and build a life in England, it makes sense that he would choose option B. But why did you? Theoretically you had more options, and why did you decide at 18 to go to a different continent? I mean, you were there from age 0 to.
I left Africa at age 7.
Right.
And had 11 years of schooling in England. And during those 11 years, I'd seen my father once. He came over for one holiday, and we toured England and Scotland and Wales in his, what we call a camper in America, but in a caravan, this English word.
And you were born in Durban.
Durban, South Africa.
And raised till the age of 7 in Durban?
Yes.
Okay.
Went to kindergarten and then 1 year of local school. Never learned Afrikaans, the other major language of white South Africa.
Right. Now, real quick, when you were in British boarding school, were you seen as different? Were you seen as, oh, this guy's a South African?
Up to a point, but not really. After a short while, I'm sure I sounded like everybody else.
Okay. You assimilated.
Yeah.
Okay. And were you House Hufflepuff, or were you?
I was number 3. We had boring house names.
Way boring numbers.
Yeah. Just it was actually a schoolhouse, and then 2 through 9, I think, is the number of houses. But you could call yourself by the name of your housemaster, and we were Staniforth.
Okay. And was he still around? Was he like the active head?
The housemaster. Yes. He would, okay. That would change with the current housemaster.
I see. See, I love it. Now, you used to be called master as a young man, weren't you?
Oh, back into South Africa?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I mean, into being a white person, you got given titles like that.
So were you a slave owner?
The trouble was we had to pay all these people.
You didn't do it right. You didn't do it well enough. Now, there would be people that would complain that you didn't pay them what you would pay an Englishman or a white person.
That is true. I mean, there's a whole. I mean, this is a serious topic, because coming from a totally different culture back into Africa, it was quite a shock. I was amazed when adult African men would come to me for permission on a piece of paper to
Right.
move from the farm to a local village over a weekend or something. And I had to write out a little paper which said, Simon Shabalala, whatever his name was,
Yeah.
has permission to go from here to there on such and such a day. And I signed my name to it. And only because I was a white guy, I had that power to give him permission to go past any police check.
Right.
It seemed extraordinary to me at the time. Of course, I got used to it, just living there under the apartheid regime.
Yeah. Because it's normal for you. I mean, was it, you were raised in it? I mean, it was, when did apartheid?
No, I was not raised. I was not raised. I mean, apartheid came in 1949.
Okay.
So it was not in
Ah.
effect when I was young and before, ages 0 through 7.
Okay. But what were the real world differences? Because you're still, the races were still separate in all, in actuality. I mean, it wasn't like before 49, it was everybody living together.
Well, I mean, there's always a natural apartheid where people are more comfortable living with their own kind. I mean, I think that's natural. I have it here, right here in the Pacific Palisades.
Sure.
I mean, on our block, I mean, it's a financial thing as much as anything. But
Yes.
It's also a comfort thing. You feel more comfortable around your own.
It's a cultural thing. It's totally understandable. I don't think anybody doesn't understand that part. But I think the difference with Africa is that day-to-day life in Africa is so radically different. I mean, these cultures are so far apart.
The cultures are very far apart. Now, in America, we've been living with, the two races have been living together for, 200 plus years? No, more than that, I suppose. Before America was America.
But I mean, you live right now with some black people. You got O.J. Simpson and Kobe Bryant living in town. I mean, aside from that, though, I mean,
O.J. is now out of town.
Oh yeah, he's out. He's close by. He's in a prison in Nevada, but he's actually
right.
He's up for parole coming up. Do you know that next year?
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, but the interesting thing is really that South Africa, the main difference, the big difference was that the separation of the races was by law. In America, it was not. The separation was not written down. It was just felt.
Okay.
But in South Africa, in fact, there was far more living together than there is in America. In America, when we have all these different areas where people live, and they're very different. In South Africa, because you're living with servants day in and day out, there's a lot more connection between the races. And people always thought that the whole thing was based on hatred. Well, my father had this way of explaining it. He said that it wasn't the hatred of one race from the other. It was exactly the opposite. Because the Afrikaners, the Boers, the Dutch descendants, what he said was that they were the ones who had a real passion for black women. And so
really?
they when, in quotes, intermarried. And created a whole group of people who they called coloreds.
That's the colors.
Mulatto, they're half white, half black.
Interesting.
So it wasn't a hatred thing at all, but the idea came because they realized when they got into power in 1949 that unless they made rules which basically affected themselves, that the whole race would become what they call khaki, which is mixed races, a mixed race.
Okay, so there were some of them that wanted to preserve their culture.
Yes. They wanted to preserve their whiteness, and so they said, it's okay, it's now illegal to sleep with a black person.
Right. And so from the outside looking in, it seems very stark, very radical to say, oh my God, there's a law where this is this and this has got to be wrong. But I feel like everything to do with South Africa, unless you've been there, unless you know what it's like in the actual situation, it's easy to criticize from outside.
Definitely. I mean, yes, they were not very good at PR.
Yeah. Because, I mean, one of the things which I find interesting, I wanted to ask you, talk about India. So the English presence in India, there was no apartheid per se. There was no official policy, right?
Not that I've ever heard of.
But in the day-to-day goings, I mean, are you telling me it was just some utopia of diversity? I mean, the native people there were not mixing in any way that people would want them to mix with the colonials, were they? I mean,
no, they kept very different, and because they were racially different, obviously, they were culturally very different, and standards of living, for example,
right,
radically different.
exactly.
So, I mean, even though, like, I always take Shabalala.
Right.
Shabalala was my father's foreman on the farm, and he was his driver when he was touring on his recording tours. And Shabby, I knew him really well, but it just didn't seem comfortable to invite him in to have lunch with us.
Mm.
He'd have to deal with a lot of things like how to hold a fork.
Mm-hmm.
These are cultural things which in other countries one learns about. When you go to a different country, you learn their foibles. You learn how to like eat with your fingers if you're going to one of those countries where you eat with your fingers, like in India.
Right. Now, Shabby was he was a family friend. I've heard many stories about him, and
Yes.
Shabalala was a great name. There's a picture that your father drew of him, painted of him, that hung in our house. It's
No,
still
that's
there.
not Shabby. That's another earlier friend of his from Rhodesia in the old days.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I thought it was Shabby.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Shabby.
No, was Shabby a literate guy?
Not to start with. While he was working for my father, he learned to read and write, and so the stories about that.
Uh-huh.
And even while I was with him, his English improved dramatically. It lost its charm, frankly, because it's very charming to hear someone struggling with the language.
And he was a lifelong employee of Hughes, correct? I mean, he was a
Yes.
family. You'd call him a family friend. I mean, he basically helped.
No, he was an employee, but he was much closer than your average employee.
Uh-huh. And he lived on the estate somewhere.
He lived on the farm. He had sort of maybe a quarter of a mile away, or a hidden house where he could have his family. And he had, I mean, for example, he had 2 wives, and this is perfectly normal for him. So that's a little awkward in the white society.
Right.
If you come to a dinner party with your 2 wives, I mean, it just doesn't happen.
Okay, I've never asked you this, but here's a question. Obviously, I was surprised to understand the difference between the 2 white groups in South Africa. And I think most people maybe listening to this don't quite understand that. You have the Dutch and you have the English. And, when I first learned about the South African War, I was expecting to see footage like out of Shaka Zulu, where you have these British guys firing cannons at these Zulu guys.
Right.
But no, it's a war between the Dutch and the English. And these people,
the Boer War.
the Boer War, right? So they were at odds with each other. Is it just a power struggle? Why did those 2 groups have so much friction?
It goes back, I think, to the time when there were ships going from Europe around the Cape of Good Hope, that's bottom of South Africa, over towards the east, India and Far East, best for trade purposes. And they needed a place to rest and, R&R, rest and relax and
Sure.
recoup and get fresh vegetables.
Yeah, and create some colored people.
Well, maybe, I don't think so at the time. I'm not sure.
Okay.
In the Cape, there were apparently at that time, there were not so many blacks.
Well, sailors do have a reputation, but yeah.
Yeah, but the Hottentots were around, but just like the Aboriginals in Australia, a lot of those got shot.
I actually heard that. I heard that a lot of the early, I don't know, the outposts from the white people, they were not even populated areas. There were no natives there.
I think this may be something which I'm learning about more recently, is that the history books may have been doctored. So I don't, but it's my belief that there were not, I mean, I know for a fact that groups of Africans were moving down from the north, and I don't think they had quite reached the Cape. And I think that was fairly empty, except for the Hottentots.
Do you know of a group called the Bantu?
The Bantu, we're talking about the Bantu.
Okay, so
East, Central, and Southern Africa.
And the Bantu are the Zulu, right? I mean, they're offshoot.
They're one branch of the Bantu.
Okay.
West Africa is racially and musically different to the Bantu.
I see. Now, Oh, but real quick, just as a side, which region of Africa do you think produces the best African music, the most compelling?
Best known is West Africa, because Americans have studied West African music for quite a long time, and they have drummers and people from there, and that
Uh-huh.
is
Is that
well
because of
known. And
the
not,
slave trade, or is that because we actually interacted with the West?
I don't know. It's easier to get to West Africa.
Yep.
The rest of it, there's good music all over the place. The best music, well, it's hard to compare. It's apples and oranges. But my father's favorite musical tribe were from Mozambique, which is on the east coast of Africa. And there is a tribe called the Chopi, Chopi,
That sounds like an Indian tribe.
but close to called Chopin, which is different. And these are people which play xylophones. Their xylophone playing and making of instruments is phenomenal, and their music is so much more advanced than most African music, which is a lot of it's improvised theme and variation. But in the Chopi people compose, and you'll have a fine composer who teaches all the parts to all the different orchestra members. I mean, you'll have an orchestra of 20 instruments, ranging from the treble instruments right down to the bass ones in 5 different sizes. And the highly sophisticated stuff. I mean, they'll put on a symphony with several movements, and they'll also have dancers involved, and the big song, which is the one wonderful occasion which I like, because as a songwriter, I follow the tradition. The idea is that the songwriter in this big song can say what he likes about the chief, but
really?
only if he sings it. If he says it, he's going to get in a lot of trouble.
I love it.
But at this one point in the year, during this big opus, he can say what he likes about the chief and get away with it.
That's great. A little political dissidence in song form.
And I've used that quite a lot, because I know by singing something, you can get away with murder.
By the way, have you seen the reaction to Daughter of Mine, your song on YouTube?
Oh, a lot of people have been very moved by it, and it's so wonderful to get that feedback.
It's crazy. That is the tearjerker of all songs.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get back to the difference between the Dutch and the English. I mean, not that I would ever suggest that English people think that they're better than other people, but I mean, is there a superiority complex where they think these Dutch are beneath us?
Well, the Dutch were farmers, and they were interested in farming, and perhaps the only reason to learn to read would be to read the Bible.
I see. So they were Christian, sort of fundamentalist rednecks.
Yes. And so they set up this farming business in the Cape Town. And then when the British found out that it was so wonderful there, they moved in. And the Afrikaners were not at all happy with that. And so that led to what is called the Great Trek. And the Great Trek is the historical fact in South African history. When the Boers got into their horse and carts, and off they went on this long trek looking for a new homeland. And they ran into various Africans and had trouble with Africans. And eventually they settled down and they found Johannesburg. Well, the trouble was that in Johannesburg, they soon found the gold. And then the English came in again and they wanted the gold. And so the Boers were upset again. And then they moved down to the Bloemfontein and the Orange Free State, where they tried to make their own country. They always wanted their own place.
Right.
But they never, but the English chased them out every single time because of superior military, I think, more than anything.
Okay, so what are the numbers? Like, what are the percentages at?
Between the two white groups, it was. I think the population they became the majority in 1949, and which gave them the vote to kick out General Smuts, who was previously.
That's his real name?
Yeah, Smuts, big
Smuts.
hero, Second World War.
Okay, so they outbred the English because they were sort of farmers, and that was their.
I think it was
that was their thing.
I think it was a political move as well. It's a nationalistic to have more children.
Right.
They're doing the same thing in Hawaii as well, trying to have more Hawaiians and less Howleys.
But I mean, if you're a Dutch farmer and you show up in London and go into some social gathering, I mean, the British people there would raise an eyebrow and be like, "Oh my God, who's this guy?" Like, what? We have to entertain. We have to talk to them.
I mean, the thing is that the Afrikaners have produced an extraordinary number of world-class people and artists and so on,
Mhm.
ballet dancers. I mean, it's odd to think of them in the same terms as, farmers and ballet dancers.
Right.
But no, and writers. I mean, they've produced some amazing people.
Uh, Now, why is so the English are not responsible for apartheid at the inception of it? I mean, it's a
No,
Dutch word. But why are they off the hook with that?
because they were in control of the country and didn't have a written law. Now, obviously, there was the segregation, as I mentioned before, was a financial one and a cultural one,
Right.
but it wasn't by law. You can't have sexual relations with a black.
And that was part of apartheid, a sexual ban?
Absolutely. Oh, yes, very much so.
Okay.
But then the funny thing, but then when Way to Minimum came, which was the show that my brother and I created with a few others, we satirized all this stuff. And some of the funny stuff about apartheid is that everybody has to be declared either European or non-European, or white or non-white. And so because South Africa traded with Japan, the Japanese were considered to be white. And yet, and the Chinese, with whom we did not have any trade agreements, were considered to be non-white. And so, if a Japanese in the country were to marry a Chinese, that would technically be illegal.
Interesting. Well, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that because the Japanese do feel that they're racially superior to the Chinese, and I mean, they would call themselves the equivalent of white, which is to call themselves Japanese. They'd be like, no, I'm not Asian. I'm not anything like these people over here. I'm not Korean. I'm Japanese. I'm not one of the mongrel dogs that are on the mainland.
Yes.
So yeah, the racial situation there is what I want to get to, because I feel like anytime you talk about white people in South Africa, people on the outside looking in are uncomfortable. And I feel like you have to really go back to colonialism as just a phenomenon at all. What, in your estimation, I mean, is it PC at all to be pro-colonial in any way? Or is it just seen as an aggressive, militaristic takeover and assassination of a foreign culture?
Well, we're at a time now when colonialism in Africa has pretty much finished, isn't it? Are there any?
Well, they're all done.
Left? I don't think so, are there?
No, I don't think there is.
So you can sort of look at it, from some distance. And I was just trying to think about that. What is the good part? The good part.
Well, but first of all, let it be said that this has been the track record of humanity since our inception. I mean, one group going to another group, but it's not this evil, malignant thing that it's always portrayed as being. I mean, obviously there's crimes and bad things that are done in the name of this, but the very concept, people are just, I'm against this. I mean,
you're not a fan of Genghis Khan and
well, I mean, he brought some good spices with him, but I mean, like, for example, the Zulus. The Zulus were colonial. They were imperialistic. I mean,
they certainly were. I mean, they were a dominant feature for quite a while. But they would bring the tribes they conquered, they would bring into their fold by marrying all the wives, in quotes again. So the next generation would all be Zulus as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine a world in which there is no one group taking over from another group. Like,
no, I don't think that you can't imagine that, because it's always happening.
It's always happened, right? It's very bizarre.
My history at my school was the worst subject. It was taught by rote, and it was all to do with the kings and queens of England and just their dates. Nothing interesting about it at all. But so history started in 1066. William the Conqueror came over and conquered the British.
Yeah.
Before that, it was the Romans. And so, we're obviously a mishmash of people.
Yeah. And the English and the Irish have been raped and pillaged by everybody, including the Vikings.
Yes. Absolutely.
But I mean, there are a lot of good things that colonialism did, which obviously just get overlooked completely.
Well, I'm thinking that the things that the colonials did was the English colonials. I don't know about all the others. My father always said that the Portuguese were very good at organizing the country, keeping it very orderly. And that stopped all the intertribal warfare.
Right.
I mean, the Zulus were not allowed to go and maraud and kill other people. I mean, these things were stopped.
Sure, general peace. But
Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? That's the second question. If you get to the other thing about, you've got to control the population somehow, because Africans were not great farmers. And if you look at a lot of Africa, it's eroded. That means that all the good topsoil has been washed out to sea, leaving just the barren rocks in many places. So there's not enough food unless you become a really good farmer to feed a huge population. And so
now,
that means you've got to take your army and you've got to go and kill the other people and use their property to grow a few peanuts.
So it was like a slash and burn type of system where they needed to constantly be moving and taking over and pillaging.
Yeah, so too many people is a problem.
Now,
so famine and disease would kill off a lot, and warfare would kill off a lot. That largely stopped when the colonials came in with the military powers to stop the fighting, and with medicine.
Now, I don't think anybody would ever accuse Africa, the history of Africa especially, as being running on all cylinders and being an optimal expression of human life. I mean, so the techno. What's that?
Just the start of human life.
Sure, right. They did good with that. But I mean, as far as the technology of farming, the colonials.
That's something people, the smart people are still trying to get Africans to. Instead of plowing over the hill, for example, you plow around the hill. As simple as that.
Really?
The techniques are like that. My nephew Jeffrey is trying to create a farm where they teach simple agricultural techniques.
Because basically, for everybody who doesn't know, a lot of the white farmers have been kicked off their farms, and the land has been given back to black people.
Zimbabwe in particular.
Zimbabwe in particular, but what's happened is
threatened in South Africa. But a fact.
But with the white flight in South Africa, I mean, the food production has been dropped off severely, and it's a major problem.
Absolutely.
And which seems like an easy fix. I mean, it seems like the information is out there. It's kind of startling that they haven't.
But politically, you can't get rid of the rulers once they're in, and the worst rulers live the longest. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, the leadership down there is unbelievable. What they get away with. I mean, just their resumes of corruption.
No, it's corrupt is the word. It's really awful.
Okay, so
Devon, don't you have anyone else online who wants to interrupt?
No, forget them. Don't worry about them. I have more probing things I want to ask you, but I want to get into some meat of it. I'm glancing over them. Usually I glance at them, but they're just chilling here. I might post this up on my main channel. Okay, so I want to ask you about my grandfather. So a lot of people get nervous and uncomfortable. Oh my God, white people in Africa. Oh my God, they employed black people. Oh my God, we're talking about black and white. They're just already uncomfortable about it. And I feel like you have to come out and be like, okay, we were against apartheid.
Yes.
Was my family against apartheid?
Yes. What is largely unknown outside of South Africa is that there was an opposition to apartheid in South Africa. These people didn't get much publicity, and they were in the minority in the government. But there were some standout people in Parliament in Cape Town, but they never had the votes, and so they couldn't fight it that much.
Okay.
Now, as far as employing blacks, when my brother moved down to Grahamstown and set up a new home down there, my sister-in-law said, "I don't want any servants in the house." Local people came to her and said, "I'm sorry, you have to. It's your civic duty to employ people because there's a bad unemployment and people need the money, and you've got to employ people. Sorry about that." So she employed people.
Right.
And that's just a fact of life. Now, obviously, you couldn't afford to employ lots of people, and you can't afford to pay them huge salaries. I mean, if you're the average person in America, for example, you don't have a servant, because if you'd have to pay them, a living wage, you couldn't afford
Trump,
it.
right?
So in South Africa, the average person couldn't afford to pay a white servant, but you can afford to pay an African servant because the Africans are able to live much more cheaply than the whites are.
They were happy to take the payment that they were given, correct?
they're grateful for, yes, I mean, that's what, it seems very unfair, but they can live on much less and live comfortably by the standards that they're used to. Now, obviously things are changing and people are starting to get good, high wages, but at the expense of others. I think there are now in South Africa, you know, some of Zuma's people, I think, are getting, you know, huge salaries and being given office cars. And
right.
I mean, well, I mean, the country can't afford it.
Well, they're printing money and the inflation is crazy and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this goes back to the fundamentals of business. It's just, you know, I mean, it's very strange if somebody's willing to work for a set rate, regardless of race or anything. I mean, you're going to pay them what you can get away with. I mean, you're not trying to starve these people out. I mean, if, you know, was the minimum wage not a real thing? Was that not, didn't exist? I guess.
Don't think there was a set minimum wage. I never heard about that. No. But you knew what people were paying, and you paid on average, and you were generous, and I mean, part of I mean, we had about, at one stage we had about 10 or 11 people working on my father's farm, and they were all housed on the farm, so they had housing, and then we had our own little grocery store right on the property, so they didn't have to go drag themselves into the town to go and buy stuff.
Right. Huh. Okay. Well,
of course.
Now, Hugh was mocked by people in the Western world and in England on some level. He was seen as he paid too much attention to African culture and music. I mean, is that fair to say?
Look, I don't think so. No, I think they admired him for his ability. They couldn't. I mean, when he started out, all his white friends said, "What are you doing? They don't have any culture." Of course, you know, they were totally wrong. My dad spotted it right away. They thought he was, one of the criticisms he received when the documentary was shown in London was that they said he's somewhat paternalistic. But the curious thing about Africans, I mean, just like from my own experience as an 18-year-old going out there, they would come to me and call me the boss for a start, you know, in course.
Sure.
Yes. And they would want me to sort of take over the role of father, even as a youngster. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Well,
it's not being paternalistic. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. They treat you like the parent.
Right. You get thrust into it. Well, it reminds me of when I go into a 7-Eleven in America, and the Indian guy oftentimes will say, "Hey, boss, and how are you doing today, boss?" But it's a sign of respect. But
well, I do that. But I very often, if I don't know someone's name, I call them chief.
Yeah. Hey, oh, well, very insensitive. Yeah. Well, I was looking at some of the single parent stats in South Africa today, which are pretty high, very, very shocking. I mean, I think 35% of South Africa has both parents, and there's a huge amount that have neither parents and a bunch that have only single mothers. But I mean, it sounds like it's a cultural thing, and it sounds like just yet another thing that is just the way it is. I mean, there's an expression, I think, "This is Africa." You know, it's just what will be, will be. This is how it is down here. And I think it's very easy for people on the outside, again, to say, "Ooh, that seems different, and I'm uncomfortable with that." But I also think they're just uncomfortable with white people in Africa to start with. Regardless if you're born and raised there. I mean, see, it's that residual guilt thing. It's like, you're a black person in America. Well, if you go back far enough, you were probably brought there on a slave ship. And so they're still kind of uncomfortable about that. And in the same way that if you're white in Africa, even if you were born and raised there and your father was born and raised there, you're still, this is not your home. You're not even supposed to be here.
Except for the Afrikaners.
Do you think that still exists?
The Afrikaners called themselves Africans. Afrikaner, I think, is, in other words, they call themselves one of the tribes of Africa. So,
but do you think that they take offense to that? I mean
yes.
Okay. Right. Unbelievable. Okay, so get back to this. Wait a minute. You do this show. You start the show with your brother, and it's a musical show. It has folk songs.
It's a musical review in which we took the folk music of many, many countries from around the world, and through the music and the dance, the traditional dances that they would do, we made fun of all their national foibles, all the national characteristics. And so we made fun of everybody. We made fun of the Germans. We made fun of the French. We made fun of American tourists. We made fun of a lot of different people, the Russians.
Oh, yeah.
But we never made fun of Africans. At that time, I'm talking about 1962, Africans were off limits. You couldn't make fun of an African. That was not fair. It was too easy. And so, and also because our family business being African music, we presented African music as well as we could. In fact, we presented music from all the peoples as well as we could. We always learned the traditional instruments and played them as correctly as possible before making fun of them. So, for example, we didn't make fun of bagpipes until we really knew how to play bagpipes. So the Africans, we did not make fun of Africans. Our finale was an African drumming finale. We had a fine gumboot dance. We played African instruments. We didn't make fun of them. That was the only thing that was off limits.
Was this a political decision, or was it just a commonly understood thing? Like at this time,
you didn't make fun of Africans. This was before Idi Amin came in. You know, he was the dictator from Uganda, and he screwed up so badly that finally the whole world realized that you could be an African politician and screw up like any other politicians can screw up around the world.
Really? Why? What's the alternative? I mean, they thought they're off limits to criticize African dictators. I mean,
well, no, one didn't criticize Africans because they hadn't been given a chance.
I see.
And there always the feeling from England, certainly in criticizing South Africans, was that if you just give them an education, they'll be perfect little black Englishmen.
But isn't this just like a low expectations? Like, isn't it treating them with these kids' gloves? It's like saying, look, you're not even on equal level of playing ground here, so we can't even criticize you for all the stuff you're messing up with.
I've sort of lost my train of thought.
Okay, well, this concept that you're not allowed to make fun.
Giving an education to Africans, it always seemed very odd to me because most Africans who were still living a very country existence, and what do they want with Latin?
I see.
What do they want with algebra?
Well,
it didn't make too much sense to me, except for the educational idea of how to twist your brain around things like that. But what they needed at that time was to know which bug is going to eat their corn.
Right.
Things like that would be practical. Well, actually, even in America, the junior colleges have a lot more to offer than the senior ones.
Well, yeah, I agree.
If you want to have a career, which is not just in being a librarian or a college professor.
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of academia is pointless. It's like mental masturbation. But I remember I was in Berlin a couple years ago, and I was at a McDonald's, and this African guy came over to me and complimented me on my, I don't know, headphones or something. And we got to talking, and he was part of a delegate. He was like a delegation of South Africans who had come to Germany to learn from the German engineers about like irrigation or something.
Oh, wow.
Like it was just a sort of state-sponsored field trip to be like, oh, how do you do this again? And let's learn that and then come back and apply it to our society.
Right.
But as far as the education goes, I feel like cultures are sort of a one-size-fits-all model. So if British people go and land in some distant land, guess what? They're going to try to recreate Britain, and they're going to do. It's going to be called New England. Okay, that's what you're going to be called.
Yep.
And so the education is going to be the same. That's all they know.
Yes.
It reminds me of Australia, and there was this big thing about how they tried to steal Aboriginal kids and whitewash them.
Exactly right.
And they tried to whitewash them and teach them how to become Australian. But that's all they know. That's what they're doing to their own kids, right? I mean, this is
right. Well, that's where the Boers made one big mistake, was that they were insisting that all Africans learn Afrikaans. And the Africans were not happy to learn Afrikaans.
Sure.
A lot of them who, actually, that's just a national, a racial trait, is that Africans tend to be extremely good linguists. I mean, Gabby and other people I worked with on the farm could speak several languages without any trouble at all. But to have to learn Afrikaans, which was a very local language, I mean, no good on the international scene at all.
Right.
It's like, in Wales today, people insist on learning Welsh.
Yeah,
The Prince of Wales, when he got his title, he had to, I think, learn to make a speech in Welsh.
Oh, really?
Classic. But what good is that to you today? I mean, not much.
I just think that this sort of highlights some of the difficulty of just the idea of bringing one culture into another culture. So even if it's by force, if the other group is not exactly welcoming and inviting this, it's such a messy thing. You're basically screwed no matter what you do. Like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Well, that's definitely the case.
If you try to educate all the Black Africans down there, what are you can educate them as a British education system or a Dutch education system. Like, that's all you're going to do. And then people will be like, well, how dare you try to teach them your version of things? I mean, why aren't you respecting their okay, well, fine, we won't educate them. You do your own thing. Well, how dare you do that?
Yeah, well, that's something that'll take more time to find out for what style of living are you training somebody? What you really need to know in life to have a successful life.
Well, aren't we very capitalistic? Don't we really always value money? For example, I remember Andrew talking about this once, where the Africans are not all about the accumulation of wealth and things and materialism.
Well, you have a different level, because my father always told me that if he overpaid his staff, as soon as they had enough money to buy a bicycle, they got on it and rode away.
No. This is a very real thing. You've talked about this, and I remember, and this could be seen as politically touchy because people would say, "Oh, you're generalizing and this and that," but the relationship between Africans and money is very different than other cultures, correct?
Well, I'm thinking immediately of the money that the new African wealthy.
Well, they have a different style.
Well, that's corruption. That's stealing from the government.
Yes, but I'm talking about
the government handing out
guys that worked in the mines.
The level of money and saving. You're talking about saving money and
the concept of saving money. The concept of, I mean, I've heard many stories where mine workers, they get paid on a Friday, they blow it all, they drink the whole night away. They come back the Monday, they have a nasty hangover, and they have no money left.
Right, and there was the other thing, which was also very controversial for some, that when the mines hired Africans from out of the country, which they did a lot, they would bring them in from other countries. They would know that Africans would eat or drink all their wages and have nothing to show for when they went home. So they imposed a system of saving, which they didn't give them all the money. They started a bank account, as it were. And so when they left, and they had rules about how many months they could be away from home, because they didn't want to mess up the culture back home. You need the young working people to be around as well.
Right.
So when they left, then they had enough money to buy something decent, a sewing machine or whatever it was, and take it back with them and contribute to those people in those countries. And so there were many people for many years in South Africa who were thinking of how to improve or help the lives of Africans, not just take and use them, as it were.
And this is coming from a place of, you're trying to be helpful in this process. It's a good intention thing that's going on. I mean,
and of course, it often comes back to bite you, but that happens.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, this almost reminds me of Native Americans and their relationship with land ownership. And they're sitting there signing contracts with the government, who's all about the acquisition of land, and they just fundamentally have no idea how important or how, what these contracts meant in terms of, oh my God, you're signing away all of this region, and now you can't. But it's a nomadic lifestyle versus a sedentary one, for starters, and so it's hard to bridge these gaps that are so huge.
Very different. Yep.
As far as the education goes, like, for example, I was listening to the stats today, and out of 144 nations they put into this survey, South Africa ranks 140th in terms of education. It's almost one of the worst nations on the planet in terms of the skills that are being delivered. Now, who gets the blame for that? Is it the question? I mean, like what we just said, I'm basing that off Western standards of what it means to have a successful education. So writing skills, math skills, etc.
Well,
is that?
I don't know, because you see, the Boers when they first came to the country, unlike the people who first went to America, who set up universities hundreds of years ago. I mean, that was a big part of coming to America, was setting up, education for people. The Boers didn't do that. They didn't have the colleges and schools. They're not interested in that. And so there was no emphasis on education.
Right.
But later, the English certainly brought in schools of all kinds, and schools for blacks. But obviously the blacks at that time were certainly not on the level of the whites for education, and so they set up separate colleges and so on.
Right.
But I think today, I've heard nothing good coming out of the government at all in any department. I'm not up to date with most of the news, but what I do hear is so abysmal.
Yeah, to change, because isn't it sort of a physics equation at this point? Like a body in motion tends to stay in motion, and a body at rest tends to stay at rest. So like if you've always been crap at education, like you've never been competitive with the rest of the world, is it really that imperative that you change or throw money at that problem if you're in leadership down there? It's not really expected, is it?
Not with the present government. I find it hard to give good credit to anyone in the present government.
Oh, I mean, seriously, you could go on for hours criticizing these people. But like, remember, you and I went to see Vicente Fox give a speech, the former president of Mexico. He came out to LA, gave a speech, and one of the things that I remember us talking about after the fact was he was trying to beat his chest a little bit and talk about his tenure as president, and he said, during my reign as president of Mexico, we had 78% of people had television or electricity in their houses.
Yes.
And we were looking at, oh my, he's proud of that? He's proud of that stat, but he probably has a reason to be proud. It probably was 50% when he took office. It's like,
you're right, exactly.
So you have to judge things on a different curve, or it's a different scale, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a bit sad, but what can be done? I mean, how do you address that issue? Like, for example, let me ask you about your knee-jerk reaction to the fact that 53 people, it's estimated, are murdered every day in South Africa.
Oh, it's.
I mean, but you also know that this is in the townships. It's not white people.
Well, yeah, I mean,
unless it's that legless guy.
Chicago's got and I understand it's getting dangerous in Dublin these days. I think they've got gang warfare there going on.
Yeah, they do have some.
And then they had it's unbelievable to me. They had these two rival motorbike gangs in America.
Yes, but not to the scale of 53 a day. That is a consistent, staggering number.
No, it's absolutely horrendous. In fact, it's hard to get your head around these figures. And HIV and the murders and the rapes in particular are just abominable.
But I remember the life expectancy thing, and I made fun of our cousin with Ian, or not cousin. He's what is Ian to me? He's married my cousin.
MC's husband.
Yeah.
Well,
cousin-in-law.
Your cousin-in-law, right? Exactly.
Okay. Anyway, he was from Zimbabwe and he moved to New Zealand, and the life expectancy in Zimbabwe was like 40, and it's like 82 in New Zealand. And I thought, Jesus. So does that mean he lives to be 60, or how does he? I mean, it's a good move on his part, but just that number alone, it begins to open your eyes to, oh my God, things are different down here.
Yep.
And now, why is it that you've seen South Africa? You were just there this year. You visited.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
And how was it, by the way? Any differences that you noticed?
Where I was, it's a very English town, and it's completely filled with schools. So it's very upper awareness sort of area. So I don't think it's typical of a lot of South Africa.
Okay, so it's a college town.
College plus a host of other schools.
Okay.
And so people are very interested and keen on learning, and there's a whole different attitude there.
Well, college campuses, they tend to be thriving communities. They tend to be some of the best cities you can go to. That's true in America.
Right. That's Rhodes University in Grahamstown.
Now, Rhodes was a bit of an asshole, wasn't he?
The man himself?
Yeah.
Well, he was. Let's make Great Britain great again.
He was the Donald Trump of his time.
Absolutely, he must have been, because he wanted to take Rhodesia, well, I mean, named after him,
Mhm.
and give it to the British Crown. I mean, he was just
Okay.
crazy.
Wow. Well, he got some good PR with his scholarships and his universities and all
Well,
that.
yeah, exactly right. A Rhodes Scholars. I mean, who was a Rhodes Scholar? Was that Clinton?
Was she? She
No,
or he?
he.
Oh, he. See, I
He was the
default to
one.
the she.
Yeah, right.
He might have been, man, I'm not sure. Now, you have lived in a couple different countries. You've been to Africa. Now, why
Three,
did,
th- three different ones, three different continents, basically.
right. Why is it that you followed the path of other Englishmen like John Cleese and the Beatles and decided to say, screw it, I'm going to Los Angeles?
Just one little thing shows my attitude. I lived on a farm in England, my grandmother's farm. It was 75 acres. And those fields had been laid out there for the past 400 or 500 years, probably.
Mhm.
I went to Africa, and on my father's farm, which was 125 acres of rocks, I was able to find one little quarter of an acre
Uh-huh.
which didn't have so many rocks. And
Uh-huh.
so I said, let's make a field here. And so that is the sort of frontier attitude. You can change something, you can
Ah,
make a field. And that's very much how America was built, on pushing west.
I see.
The new frontier, you can do things. In America, the answer is why not?
I see.
Um,
So, Rena was talking to me about this. The general attitude of Americans is very optimistic,
yes,
blindly, like without even any reason, just in a vacuum, be
yeah,
optimistic. You could do this. You might be president. You could. Why not? Like you say,
yeah.
and it isn't that in contrast to the British sensibility, which is it's definitely in contrast to the Germans, which is
Oh, in Britain, no, you can't do. No, no, we don't do it that way.
yeah, yeah. You say no, yeah.
No.
Germany's policy is everything's verboten. No, it's not. Don't. There's no humor. Let's not. It's not going to happen. Or they play it safe. Isn't
Yeah.
it sort of a risk versus reward
Uh-huh.
type thing? I mean, trying something new, you're risking. You're investing time
Right.
and energy into a project that might not yield anything.
Right.
Um, like you basically crafted a job that didn't exist. Uh,
Well, yeah, I got lucky, and I was able to find a little niche in show business rather than being on stage and playing the role of somebody else.
mhm,
I was not good at that because I don't speak American, and most
mhm.
of the roles were for Americans, and so I was able to start into one-man shows for school audiences, and that was worked very well for me.
And this was after a successful run touring the world, doing this musical sketch comedy sort of
Yeah,
show.
I did wait a minute for 7 years around the world, and then after that, I did a couple of other Broadway shows,
Mhm.
but not speaking American. It was getting less and less work available for me, so I moved out to the West Coast, thinking I was going to do more television out here.
Well,
In fact, I didn't, but
you,
I did
you
some.
you appeared on Johnny Carson a couple times.
4 times on the Carson Show,
Wow, 4 times. Wow.
and yeah, and some of the others.
And tell us about real quick about the Ed Sullivan experience.
Ed Sullivan was this man who was really a journalist. And he had this variety show, and the variety show was live on Sunday nights. And he would get all the best acts from around, and anyone who was on Broadway would come on, and anyone up and coming. I mean, he's the one who featured the Beatles first. He's the one who first featured Elvis, but they wouldn't allow him. They couldn't film him from the
Ah,
waist down, only the top half of him.
right. I see.
They had censors, but
Hmm.
we had our shot on Ed Sullivan, and
And so you went on and did the gumboot dance, which
we did,
is
yeah. This was the only we did a good gumboot dance, but we were also making fun of colonials at that time,
uh-huh,
and I was dressed up as a colonial, wearing my khaki uniform and my pith helmet, PITH,
right,
and it
which
was
you still
very.
have.
I still have it. It's almost fallen apart. It's so ancient.
Uh,
And I gave myself the name, although it was never used on stage, as Professor Piercing,
mhm.
because as I spoke, every time I got to an S, I would whistle,
Right.
Professor Piercing.
Yes, and you said this to Mr. Sullivan. You whistled the Sullivan, didn't you?
Yes, I went at the end of the act, completely unrehearsed. He said, "Come over here," beckoning me because I was the sort of leader of this little group of dancers.
Yeah.
And he grabbed me by the hand and never let go for about 30 seconds. He just held my hand.
Yeah, that's very strange.
Very strange.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about all the members of the cast, and he said, "Thank you for coming." And I said, "Thank you, Mr. Sullivan."
I think I might want to show my viewers this sort of apartheid sketch you guys did, where you're making fun of the policies and the white people. And do you remember the one I'm talking about?
Yes. Is it the Calypso?
Well, no, not the black and white calypso, which is fantastic.
Hastings Banda, Kenneth Kaunda, Matanzima in Africa, cha cha cha.
Yeah, the cha 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 one. There it is. Yeah, and you basically
that was not in the show always. That was just for a brief period that was in the show, and it was talking about all the different leaders in Africa at that time. Dr. Hastings Banda, he was from Zambia, I guess, and he'd been overseas and became a doctor. And then they said, well, "Look, you're the only educated person in the whole of the country. You've got to come back and be the leader." And he felt a responsibility, and he did go back.
But it seems like in the sketch you're making fun of some of the policies, the relocation of people and the rights that they were going to have.
Absolutely. No, we were mocking the minister.
A bunch of BS and some of the fine print of these policies.
Oh, absolutely, yes. But the interesting thing was that when we played the Wait a Minute in South Africa for the 2 years before we started touring the world, we had a lot of political stuff in the show, and we got away with it. The government always sent a couple of spies, or whoever they were, to judge the show. And if it was considered of cultural value, then you were taxed at a basic rate. If they had considered it not cultural, they wouldn't have banned it, but they would have taxed you at a rate that would put you out of business right away.
Oh my God!
So we passed the censor, and we think we passed because we think they didn't understand the jokes.
That's what it is. I think that's honestly how American movies sometimes, like Austin Powers, the sequel, The Spy Who Shagged Me.
Yes.
I mean, if they truly understood what shagging is, they would never let that be a mainstream American movie.
That's amazing.
And it's famously, you can get away with swearing in Spanish on American television because the censors just don't care enough to even. They just don't. It's over their head.
Excuse me, someone's knocking on my front door. I'll be back in a minute.
All right. Oh, so this is interesting for me to have a chat with my dad. We have these chats on occasion, but of course they're not in front of you guys. But the man is like a wealth of stories and information, and like every time I talk to him, he has new things. But he's been a showman and a public speaker and a singer and a songwriter, musician for so many years. I mean, he's just a very creative guy, and so it's a real pleasure to have. I don't know. Maybe you guys tell me. It might be interesting that this is the guy who raised me. And I don't know if all of you know, my mother died when I was a child, so he was the primary sort of guy. It was him.
Okay, I'm back.
Hey, okay. So let me ask you, why did you name me Kunjani, a Zulu middle name?
I feel the connection to Africa a lot. The firstborn of my loins was Sarah. I gave her an African middle name, Moyo, which means literally heart in Karanga.
It was princess.
Well, Moyo, it's heart, and Sarah means princess.
Oh, okay.
So her name is Princess Best Beloved, you might say, of you're being poetic. And so I like that a lot. And then I wanted to give you I also liked being connected with places. That's because my father was born in Devonshire. I gave you that name, Devon.
So,
although I lived in Somerset. Somerset had been taken by a man called Mr. Morn. Somerset Morn, if you know his name. So I couldn't use Somerset, but Devon. And then I just wanted a good African word for your middle name. And Kunjani is such a nice thing to say to people. How are you?
Yeah. And so you're almost on par with David Beckham and Posh Spice, who named their kid Brooklyn because they conceived their child in Brooklyn.
That's the sort of idea, yes.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was resistant to that name early on, but the more you think
Yeah,
about it.
I realize it could have been a hardship, but one can always change your name legally if you're desperate about it.
I think I explained to some of my friends once, getting gifts from Andrew. They're very sweet. They would send birthday things, and you would also get into your South African mode where you would say, Devon, why don't you wear sandals at school? And I wear sandals all the time. I mean, it's far more comfortable. You get the airflow and all that,
Right.
without any understanding that if I were to show up at school wearing sandals, I would be ostracized immediately. It would be social suicide.
Oh, I was never more horrified when you asked for trousers of a certain brand,
Oh God, yeah,
like
you
name pants.
you were a bit different. I mean, you'd wear beaded ties, a tie that was
Yes.
made of beads, and I think I got a beaded tie once, and I was just the idea of showing up at school with that. I mean,
No,
God,
yeah,
mortifying.
I realize. Well, I had the same mortification with my mother. I mean, she would knit,
Mm-hmm.
and and when I got my school colors, and I happened to go to a school called Rose Hill, and the school color was pink. And so when you got your award for being on the first team for soccer or whatever it was,
Right.
you were allowed to wear this pink sweater. Well, my mother said, "Well, but that costs a lot of money to buy one of those. I'll make one." So she made this thick, woolly pink thing, and I looked so completely different to everybody else.
That's
So
terrible.
embarrassing.
How did she send it to you? Via owl, or is that technology not?
Practically, yes.
Oh
Well,
God.
I used to get parcels. My mother would also, during the wartime, she would make sew socks for soldiers. She had a knitting machine in which she made socks, which she sent off to the Allies. And she made my socks, and but the socks could not be washed the way that standard socks could be washed because they would shrink.
Mhm.
So she insisted I mail them back to her for washing. So I mailed them back. And then
Oh,
she would mail the socks back to me all washed. But then also she would include in the parcels all sorts of candy,
uh-huh.
little sweeties. So there was some advantage, but not a lot.
See, now let me try to understand the origin. You just said sweeties. That's the South African side of you.
Well, yeah, or the English. I don't know who's in your group.
Well, I think sweetie, just from watching District 9, where he's giving out candies to these aliens,
Oh
and he
yeah,
says,
right.
"Hello, it's the sweetie man." I think sweetie.
Yes,
I mean, because I was describing to the people in the chat muti, and
yes.
that's got to be South African, right?
Muti is definitely, yes.
Yeah.
That's not even that's not in general parlance.
But I guess it's weird because you're still English in South Africa, and you still
Yes.
have Englishisms. I mean, it's
Oh yeah,
not
tea time. Well, I mean,
right.
the colonials remained far more English than the English ever did. The
Oh,
English
really?
changed,
They
and the
preserved the
colonials.
culture.
If you wanted to see what old time England was like, you've got to go overseas.
Uh-huh. I see. Man. See, it's a very strange thing to me. I mean, when you were back in South Africa, was there any part of you that was nostalgic and wanted to stay longer?
In South Africa,
Yeah.
as a youngster or
No,
as an
no.
adult?
Now, like recently. Like,
Oh no, no, no. I've made myself at home in this little part of Los Angeles.
right. I mean, you landed in an amazing spot. I mean, it's
I
a
got so
great
lucky.
place.
I had no idea how beautiful it was. I just said, "Oh, this place it grows the same sort of things that they grow in Durban. It's nice. It's got good weather, and I've got some friends here. And why don't I
Mhm.
buy a house here?"
Maybe
So I
you could
did.
speak a little bit on, before we wrap it up. I know we've been talking for a while. Um, when you go to these schools and you teach them about Africa, which one you do, you have an entire show about African music, and you teach
Yes,
American children.
it's about the music and some of the cultural things. Yes, and the costumes, the dance, and the instruments.
Instrument stories, all that.
Yeah.
But there's been some resistance by the fact that you're white,
Yes.
which is absurd because you're an African. I mean, you're South African,
Well,
coming
yeah.
from,
I mean,
coming from.
sometimes I have this one friend who is a black man. He's an actor, and he worked his way up, and he eventually found himself working at the California Arts Council.
Mhm.
And he laughs like a drain when he tells people. And here he is, the most African American person I know, Paul.
Nice, exactly. But not just a regular African. I mean, you come from a lineage of a legacy of famous African musicologists. So I mean, and not to mention your brother. I mean,
Right.
Your brother is
Well, right.
dedicated his whole life to.
Exactly. Like my father, he took over my father's role in Africa as basically the leading authority on African music from that part of the country.
Right. I mean, this reminds me of, when I talk about you, I obviously speak in glowing terms about how much of an expert you are on all things African music. And if I were to confront you with that, you'd say, well, you should see my brother, or you should see my father.
Right, exactly.
They're the guys.
No, I just pick up a few hints here and there. I can pass
Well,
on some good stuff.
that's
But
a few 100,000 songs and stories, but
I don't pretend to be an expert. But what I do know is good stuff, and I'm trying to raise people's opinion about Africa, because it was always known as the dark continent because people didn't know what was in there.
So you're shedding light on the dark continent.
There you go. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, it reminds me of the story with my girlfriend Rena. I said, "Oh my God, you're amazing at cooking. You're just fantastic. Where'd you learn this?" And she would always self-deprecate. "Oh no, I'm nothing. You should see my mother." And then I met her mother, and I said, "Wow, you are simply amazing. Now I see where Rena gets it. Amazing food." And she said the exact same. She said, "Well, no, you should see my mother. I'm nothing. You should see her." I think there's something to that, but of course, you're also English, and
yes.
England is the home of self-deprecation.
I probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So this has been very fun, Dad. Thank you for
well, okay.
engaging my questions.
Nice chatting and getting onto various topics. We flew by many of them.
Yeah.
But no, you're a good interviewer. You did really well.
Well, I mean, I obviously I knew a lot of the stuff we went over, but I'm aware that other people are listening, so I guess it makes sense to.
All right, well, my best to all your friends who are listening.
Okay. And, well, friends is a bit of a strong term. I call them stalkers because that's technically what they're doing. But yeah. Well, we'll do it again. I'll think of some other ideas. And
okay.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Good night.
Bye.
All right. So let's see here. I think my dad's probably figuring out how to eject from this. I'll do him the service of booting him, because that could have taken a while. Anyway, that was my father, Paul Tracey, hell of a guy. And yeah, that was quite fun. I liked it. My conversations with him always are, we have a tradition. We always used to go out and go to a restaurant and just maybe do a crossword puzzle and then just have conversations and just talk on and on. And so that's a big part of my life, and pretty much my favorite guy on the planet. So I hope you guys took something from that and a little insight into South Africa and just the reality on the ground. I think the reality is messier than people want it to be. I think it's obviously not an ideal reality. I mean, it's harsh, man. You start looking at these stats and you go there, within the first minute of being there, you realize I am not in Kansas, and this is a different situation. So I've been talking for quite some time, and it's early morning here in Germany, so I guess I'll wrap it up unless there's any other questions from the chat. Embarrassing. He didn't shame me. That was nice of him. Well, thanks for stopping by, y'all, and talk to you later.